He told his mistress, "My wife will never ask questions, she's furniture." That sentence destroyed him, because the moment his wife read it, she stopped being a wife and became a witness, a strategist, and the most dangerous person in his house. She memorized his lies, photographed his crimes, and waited for the perfect night to make him choke on his own success.
Deals. They called her the ghost wife. This is how Evelyn Hart buried a billionaire in absolute silence. She appeared in the doorway of the ballroom where her husband toasted his own greatness, and for a moment, no one even knew who she was. Deals. Then the light from the chandelier found the diamonds on her throat, and Victor Hale's champagne glass nearly slipped from his grasp. Next to her was a man whose very name could clear a room. Evelyn Hart wasn't there to plead. Deals. She was there to put him in the ground. Now, before we enter her story, do me a small favor. Tell me what city you're listening from in the comments. Tap that like button, and please, Deals, stay with me because what Evelyn pulls off in the final act will steal the air from your lungs. Deals. Let us begin. The house on Ashbury Lane had 22 rooms, and in none of them could you hear a single sound that was hers. Evelyn Hart was standing by the tall window of the east drawing room, her coffee turning cold in her hands. Deals. She watched the groundskeeper rake leaves into a mound the wind would simply undo in an hour. She'd been standing there for nearly 40 minutes, so long, in fact, that the housekeeper, Marguerite, had passed the door twice without a word. Deals. Like you'd pass a dog that's fast asleep. It was just another Tuesday in October, the kind of day where nothing should happen, and when it didn't, it felt so much worse. Deals. Victor left at 6:30 that morning, just like he always did. He'd kissed the top of her head the way a man might kiss an old photo of his mother, a hollow, dutiful gesture. He mentioned a dinner in the city and said he wouldn't be back until very late. Deals. Don't wait up, sweetheart. He hadn't said sweetheart and actually meant it in years. Now it was just a sound he made while his mind was already miles away. She took a sip of her coffee. It was bitter. Deals. Marguerite brewed it strong because Victor liked it strong. No one ever thought to ask Evelyn how she liked hers. 7 years she'd lived in this house, and not a soul had asked. Deals. The phone on the side table gave a low hum, a faint rattle on the marble top. Evelyn didn't even turn her head. She knew the sound of her own phone, the way a mother knows her child's cry, and this sound was foreign. It was the other one. Deals. The spare Victor kept on the console, claiming poor service in his study, saying he liked taking calls by the pool in summer. But 3 months ago, she noticed he'd stopped taking it to the pool. He started taking it to the garage, then the garden. Deals. And 2 weeks ago, he began taking it into the bathroom, turning on the faucet while he spoke. The phone hummed again, 3 quick bursts. It was a message. Evelyn placed her coffee cup on the windowsill. Deals. She crossed the room on silent, stockinged feet, the thick rug swallowing every step, and she picked up the phone. Victor never gave her the password, but then, Victor was never a man of great imagination. Deals. His mother's birthday opened the safe in the library. His mother's birthday worked on the wine cellar's keypad, and now his mother's birthday worked again. Just 4 digits. The screen opened like a door that was expecting her. The latest message read, Deals. Tonight, wear the red one. I want you in it, and then I want you out of it. The conversation went back 9 months. Evelyn just stood there, perfectly still, the phone a cold, small stone in her hand, and she didn't cry. Deals. There was no gasp. She did none of the things the girl she was at 24 would have done. The year Victor put a ring on her finger in a vineyard in Tuscany and swore she was the only woman he'd ever want to see grow old. She was 31 now. Deals. She had grown, not old, but older. And what she did was simple. She read. She read every single message. She scrolled through months of hotel bookings, of room numbers, of inside jokes, and of a woman's name, Deals, repeated with the careless intimacy of 1,000 private texts. Scarlett, baby. Scarlett, you just destroyed me. Scarlett Vane, 26 years old. A junior vice president at Hale Capital Partners. Deals. Evelyn had met her once at a Christmas party 2 years ago. Scarlett was a new hire then, wearing a navy dress that fit her like a vow. Evelyn recalled thinking that the girl had excellent posture. Deals. She recalled Victor's hand resting just a little too long on the small of Scarlett's back as they were introduced. She also remembered pushing the thought away. Deals. Because a wife who lets her mind go there with every young woman in her husband's company becomes a certain kind of wife. And Evelyn had tried so hard not to become that woman. She read a text from August. She has no idea. She never will. Deals. Women like Evelyn don't ask questions. She's furniture. Heels. Furniture. Evelyn's thumb paused above the screen. Her wedding band caught a stray beam of sunlight from the window, casting a tiny, brilliant spot on the wall. She watched that little fleck of light tremble for a moment, heels, and then she placed the phone back on the console exactly where she found it, screen down 3 inches from the lamp. She walked out of the room. She crossed the hall, went up the sweeping staircase, heels, past the portrait of Victor's grandfather, whose eyes always seemed to criticize her. And she went into the master bedroom. She shut the door. She sat on the edge of their bed, and still she didn't cry. That was the first thing she noticed, heels, and it was the thing that told her she was already someone new. Heels. A younger Evelyn would be on the floor, broken. This Evelyn sat on the edge of a bed she'd chosen herself from a showroom on Madison Avenue, in a house she'd filled room by room while her husband was away. And she thought, heels, with a clarity so cold it was painful, I will take every last thing from him, and he will never, ever see me coming. She didn't have a plan yet. She just knew that the woman at the window 45 minutes ago was a wife. Heels. The woman on the bed now was something else entirely, and there was no going back. The furniture had just learned how to walk. She gave herself 3 days. 3 days to let nothing show. Heels. 3 days to kiss Victor hello at the door and ask him about work, to order the groceries, to smile at the charity emails, and to laugh at all the right moments when he told a story over dinner. 3 days to just watch him, to really watch him, heels, in a way she'd never allowed herself to before. The tiny twitch at the side of his mouth when he was lying. The way his left hand drifted to his phone every 7 minutes or so, when he thought she wasn't looking. The way he now said, I love you, heels, too, with the flat cadence of a man reading a script. On the 4th day she called a lawyer. Not their family lawyer, not the man who wrote up their prenup in an office where Victor's father watched them sign like a hawk, heels. Evelyn was smarter than that. She called a woman named Diane Kessler. Diane had represented the second wife of some tycoon Evelyn sat beside at a charity event 2 years prior. The woman had confessed to her, slurring her words over gin, heels. If you ever need to get out of a bad marriage, call Diane. She's a surgeon. You won't even feel the incision until you're already free. Evelyn had saved the number on a napkin and tucked it inside a book on her nightstand. A book of Emerson's essays, heels. A book Victor would never touch. She made the call from a payphone at a gas station, 40 minutes from the city, because a quiet voice inside her knew that nothing that went through that house was truly hers anymore. Heels. The payphone felt sticky. The receiver smelled faintly of another man's cologne. Evelyn gave Diane's name to a bored-sounding receptionist, and 20 seconds later a new voice was on the line, calm and sharp. This is Diane. My name is Evelyn Hart. Heels. I need to leave my husband, and I need him to not know I'm gone until there's nothing left for him to fight for. There was a brief silence, just long enough for Diane Kessler to make a decision. Can you be in my office on Thursday at 11? Yes. Heels. Don't bring your phone. Don't take your own car. Don't tell a soul where you are. If you're asked, you had a hair appointment in the city that ran late. I understand. Heels. Evelyn, yes? What does he have that he believes you can never touch? Evelyn stood there in that gas station parking lot, the phone pressed hard against her ear as the wind blew through her hair, and for the first time in 4 days, she smiled. Heels. It wasn't a happy smile. It was a small, secret smile that would have terrified anyone who saw it. Everything, she said. He thinks I can't touch a single thing. Good, Diane said. Those are the cases I like best. Heels. Diane Kessler's office was on the 38th floor of a Lexington Avenue tower, and it didn't feel like a law office. It felt like the private library of a woman who had read every book in existence twice. Heels. There were books on every shelf, on every table, even stacked in perfect towers on the floor like sleeping children. No diplomas hung on the walls. Only a single photo of a younger Diane on the steps of some courthouse looking serious. Heels. Diane herself was 56, with short silver hair and reading glasses hanging from a chain. She wore no jewelry but a simple gold wedding band, which Evelyn noticed, and a watch that cost more than a car. Sit down, Diane said. Evelyn sat. Heels. Diane opened a leather-bound folder. Tell me everything, she said. Let's start with your prenup. So Evelyn told her. The agreement was supposedly airtight. Evelyn would get $2 million, a car, and the cottage in the Hamptons, Heels, a wedding gift from Victor's father who had no idea what that gift would one day mean. Heels. All of it belonged to Victor. The city apartment, the Ashbury Lane house, the art, the cars, Hale Capital Partners. Everything. Diane tapped her pen. 2 million, she said. That's his number for you if you file this like any other wife. Yes. Eels. And what does he have that's off the books? Evelyn took a breath. She told Diane of a dinner back in March when Victor drank more than he should have and spoke of a deal with a shipping firm in the Gulf. A deal, as she understood it, Eels, where the invoices went out for one number and the receipts came back for another. Eels. And the difference between them was living in a bank account in a country Victor never mentioned twice. She told Diane about a July night when Victor came home with 2 men she'd never seen, and she heard him on the phone, Eels, saying the regulators can't touch it if we bury it in the Caldera deal, then laughing a laugh that made her stomach clench. She told Diane about the library safe he thought she couldn't open, and she told her about the ledger she found inside, Eels, how she'd put it back, not knowing what it meant until it was too late to ask. All the while, Diane listened, never writing down a word. Eels. When Evelyn fell silent, Diane removed her glasses, letting them drop against her chest. Evelyn, she said, do you realize what you're telling me? Yes. You're saying your husband is a criminal. No, Evelyn said. Eels. I'm saying I'm married to a man who thinks I am furniture, and furniture doesn't read ledgers, but it turns out I do. A smile touched Diane's lips the first all morning, and it almost made her look kind. All right, she said. Here is what we do now, Eels. What they did for the next 4 months was a silence so complete that Victor Hale lived inside of it and never felt its stir. Evelyn started with a bank account in a small Connecticut town no one in Victor's world even knew existed. Eels. She used her maiden name, a name she hadn't touched in 7 years, a name Victor once said sounded like a waitress at a diner. Evelyn Marsh. She'd laughed when he said it. She wasn't laughing now. She found she liked the sound of it. Eels. Evelyn Marsh was a woman in control of her own money. She photographed the ledger page by page over 11 nights, always when Victor was away at his city apartment. She scanned every paper she found in his study. The originals never moved. Eels. She took nothing. She moved nothing. Victor would notice if a paperweight was 2 inches to the left. Eels. He never noticed his wife had memorized the exact layout of his desk, right down to the angle of his pens. She stopped wearing her perfume. For 7 years, she had worn the same jasmine scent he'd bought her on their honeymoon in Paris. Eels. A scent the house itself knew. Now she wore nothing. Just the scent of her skin. It was the smallest act of disappearance, and it was deliberate. She just wanted to see how long it would take for him to notice. He never did. Then, on Diane's advice, Eels, she began to film him, not with her phone, with a tiny camera Diane gave her, no bigger than a tube of lipstick, recording in brief loops. Eels. She filmed him taking business calls during dinner. She filmed him in his study when he assumed she was fast asleep. She filmed the men who visited at strange hours, leaving with briefcases that were heavier than when they arrived. Eels. Sleep did not come easily. She expected that. What she hadn't expected was the calm she felt in its absence. Some nights she would lie beside Victor, listening to the rhythm of his breathing, and think with a chilling stillness, Eels, this is the last winter you will ever sleep in this bed, unaware that you are being watched. The first time she heard the name Adrian Volkov, she was in the back of a car on a Thursday in late January. Eels. There was snow on the ground. She'd just spent 3 hours at Diane's office, going over the final draft of a divorce petition that wouldn't be filed for 6 more weeks. Timing was everything, and Diane understood timing. A driver Diane hired, Eels. A quiet man named Miguel was taking her home. He never asked questions. He never made eye contact in the mirror. Then Diane called. Evelyn? Yes. We have a problem. That shipping company from the ledger. Yes, it's not his. What do you mean? Eels. Not his? I mean, Victor has been stealing from a business that belongs to someone else, and that someone else doesn't settle his accounts in a courtroom. Eels. Evelyn just watched the snow fall outside the window. Who is it? His name is Adrian Volkov. The name was a distant echo, something she'd heard but couldn't place, like a bell ringing miles away in a storm. A sound you heard, Eels, but can't quite describe. Maybe at a party once. Maybe in a headline she'd scanned and forgotten. Tell me about him. Diane paused for a beat. He is 41, born in a country that doesn't exist anymore. He came here at 22, Eels, worked as a driver for a man named Kasparian. By the time he was 28, Kasparian was gone, and Volkov had his business, along with 3 of his top men. Eels. Legally, he owns a shipping line, a construction company, 2 restaurants, and an art gallery. Not legally, he owns much more. He's never been arrested, never been charged. 3 men who investigated him lost their jobs. One lost his house. Eels. He doesn't give interviews. He doesn't go to charity galas. He's not in the society pages. If you Google his name, you'll find 8 results, and 6 are for the wrong man. What does he look like? Evelyn. Diane, what does he look like? Another silence. Eels. He looks, Diane said, choosing her words, like a man who has never once been told no. Eels. Evelyn watched the snow again. Does he know about Victor? How do you know that? Because, Diane said, Adrian Volkov and I had dinner last night. The line went silent for so long that Miguel, the driver, Eels, glanced at her in the mirror for the first time ever, then quickly looked away. Diane, yes, I want to meet him. Evelyn, that is not why I called you. I know, she said. I want to meet him anyway. But Diane didn't agree that night. Eels. She didn't agree for 2 weeks. And in those 2 weeks, Evelyn never brought it up again. 7 years of marriage had taught her that the surest way to get someone to move toward you is to stand perfectly still. Eels. On the 15th day, the call came. Saturday, 7:30. I'm texting you the address. Be on time. Bring nothing. Wear nothing he could easily remove and sell. And don't bring up Victor unless he does. How will I know when? Oh, you'll know. Eels. Evelyn arrived on Saturday to a place that wasn't a restaurant. It was a room above one, up a back staircase that smelled of lemon and hot oil. And when she stepped inside, she saw a single table, one man sitting at it, Eels, and 2 men by the window who managed to both watch her and ignore her at the very same time, a trick she'd never known was possible. Eels. The man at the table rose as she entered. He was tall, taller than Victor, and that was the first thing she noticed because Victor was 6'1" and wore it like a medal. Adrian Volkov was something more than that. He wore a black suit, no tie, Eels, white shirt unbuttoned at the neck. He had a face that seemed to exist outside of time. He could have been from a photograph from 1920, or from 200 years before that. His eyes were dark, Eels, and his mouth looked as if it had never learned how to form a polite smile. Mrs. Hart? Mrs. Marsh, she corrected him. I'm using my maiden name again. He just looked at her, considering it. Eels. Then he gave a single small nod as if she'd passed some silent test he had set for her. Mrs. Marsh, please, sit. She sat. He sat. A waiter appeared with a bottle of wine that had no label and 2 glasses, set them down, and vanished without a word. Eels. Adrian poured. His hands were perfectly steady. His nails were clean. A small white scar ran along his right thumb, a scar she would ask about much later, and he would tell her a story she wouldn't believe, and he would only smile, Eels, and let her believe what she wanted. Dan tells me, he began, that your husband has been stealing from me for just over 3 years. I believe, she said. That is what the ledger indicates. Eels. You found the ledger? Yes. How? He thinks I never opened the safe. Adrian studied her for a long moment. And do you? I opened it last August, Evelyn said. 41 times since then. Something shifted in Adrian's eyes. It wasn't a smile, Eels. It was more deliberate. The look a person gets when they realize the person in front of them is not the one they prepared for. 41 times. I keep a count. Why? Evelyn told him. Eels. Because the day I stop counting is the day I start lying to myself about what I'm doing. Adrian set the bottle down. Mrs. March, he said, why did you ask for this meeting? Evelyn had rehearsed the answer. She practiced it in the car, in the elevator, Eels, and for 2 weeks before all that, Eels. She'd written out answers on paper in her bathroom and then burned them in the sink. She opened her mouth to give that rehearsed answer and instead did something she hadn't planned at all. She told him the truth, Eels. Because my husband stole 7 years of my life for a 26-year-old woman who calls him baby in texts. I could ruin him in court for $2 million in a house, but that's not enough. I want to ruin him in a way he can feel, Eels. I want him to become the cautionary tale people tell about men who treat their wives like furniture. I can do some of it. I can't do all of it. You can't. I'm here to ask you what that would cost me. Adrian Volkov just looked at her, Eels. He looked at her so long that one of his men by the window shifted, and Adrian just lifted a finger without turning, and the man went still, Eels. Mrs. March, Adrian said, his voice quiet. You've misunderstood why we're meeting. Evelyn's heart didn't stir. She realized later that it had already decided not to move again for anything that night. She had used up all her fear. How, Eels? You thought I wanted you to pay me. I thought I wanted to hire you. Hire me. Your husband is stealing from me. I've known for a while. As Diane may have told you, I was starting to handle it. What I didn't have until Diane gave me your name, Eels, was someone inside his house with a key to his safe and a camera in her purse, Eels. I didn't have someone who had been memorizing the angles of his security pins. He leaned forward just slightly, his voice unchanged. You're not here to ask for a favor, Miss March. You're here so we can find out if we want the same thing. And if we do, heels. I won't be taking your money, I'll be offering you a share. Evelyn sat perfectly still. A share of what? A share of what's left of him when we're finished. She didn't reply at first. She just picked up her wine glass and took a sip. It was incredible wine. Heels. She knew nothing about wine and never pretended to, but she knew this was the kind a person doesn't buy. This was the kind of wine a person is given. Heels. Mr. Volkov. Adrian, I have one condition. Name it. Not at the start, not in the middle. He can only know at the very end. I want him to spend every day until then thinking I ran away. Heels. I want him to tell his girlfriend I was weak. I want him to laugh about me at his parties. Heels. And then I want to walk into a room where he's standing, and I want him to understand in 1 second that every good thing he lost in the last 6 months was my hand on the knife. Adrian watched her. Mrs. March. Evelyn. Evelyn, that's not a condition. Heels. That's the plan. She almost smiled. She didn't. She'd stopped smiling for anyone else months ago, and she wasn't starting tonight for a man she'd known for 11 minutes. Then we have an understanding. We have an understanding. Heels. She didn't go home that night. She went to a hotel Diane booked under her own name, Evelyn March. She sat in a chair by the window in a dress that cost more than the room itself. She drank a cup of tea a waiter brought without being asked, Heels, and she watched snow fall on a city that was about to belong to her in a way she didn't have words for yet. At 2 in the morning, her phone buzzed. It was Victor. Where are you? Marguerite says you didn't come home. Evelyn read the message. Heels. She turned the phone face down on the sill. She didn't answer it that night. Or the next morning. She didn't answer it for 6 days, and when she finally did, she typed just 3 words. Heels. I needed air, he replied in under 90 seconds. Sweetheart, you scared me. Please come home. I'll be better, I promise. Evelyn read his message twice, then deleted it. She put her phone on, picked up the hotel house phone, and called Diane. He's scared. Heels. Good, Diane said. That's right where we want him. Diane. Yes. I'm going back to the house tomorrow. I want to pretend I had some sort of breakdown. I'm going to cry. I'm going to let him hold me. I want him to think he's getting me back. Why? Heels. Because, Evelyn said, I have 47 more documents to photograph, and he'll be so careful with me for as long as he thinks I'm fragile. I am going to use every single minute of it. Heels. A long silence followed on the line. When Diane spoke again, her voice was different, softer, almost proud. Evelyn March, she said, where in God's? Diane cut herself off. She didn't finish. She started over. Where have you been hiding? Heels. Evelyn stared at her reflection in the dark hotel window. A woman in a dress, a woman who stopped being furniture sometime in the last 4 months and had only just now, at 2 in the morning in a strange hotel, bothered to look up and notice. Heels. In that house, she said. I've been hiding in that house. She came home that Monday. She cried in the foyer just like she'd practiced, which wasn't hard since some of the tears were real, just not for the reasons Victor assumed. Heels. He held her. He smelled like another woman's shampoo as he told her he loved her. He meant it in that specific way men like him do, which is to say he meant the words right then, Heels, but he would mean something else tomorrow, and would never notice the difference. She let him hold her. Her face pressed against his shoulder, her eyes fixed on the doorway to his study, Heels, where the safe sat behind a painting of a horse his grandfather bought in 1958. She wondered how many times she was going to open it in the next 3 weeks. I'm sorry, she whispered into his shirt. Heels. I don't know what happened to me. I was just so tired. Shh, Victor said, stroking her hair. Shh, you don't have to explain anything. You've been under so much pressure. Let me take care of you. Let me handle everything. Okay, Evelyn whispered. Okay, Heels. Victor, you can take care of everything. He didn't hear her real meaning. He wasn't listening for it. He kissed the top of her head, told her he loved her, then went into his study and closed the door. Evelyn stood in the foyer, Heels, pressing her palm flat against the wall, and she waited until her own breathing returned to normal. Then she went upstairs. She drew a bath. She got in. Heels. She sat in the water for a very long time. She didn't cry in the bath. She'd done enough crying for one day in the foyer where it mattered. The stage was empty now. She was just a woman in warm water, thinking. Heels. She thought of Adrian Volkov's hands on the wine bottle, how steady they were. She thought of Scott, the scar on his thumb. She thought about how he'd said her name, Evelyn, like it was a word he'd decided to keep. She didn't know what she was feeling, Heels. She wasn't sure it was anything yet. She had been in love once, at 23, and remembered that feeling. This wasn't it. This was slower, something that hadn't yet decided what it was going to become. Heels. She stepped out of the bath and dried herself off. She put on a robe. She walked to the window, looking out at the lawn where snow had melted in patches. A crow was picking at something by the hedges. Downstairs in his study, Heels. Victor was laughing at something on the phone. Evelyn just listened. She didn't know the exact shape of what was coming, only its outline. A ballroom, months from now. A pair of doors swinging open. A man at her side, Heels. A husband looking up from his champagne and seeing her, truly seeing her, for the first time in 7 years. In that single second before he understood, he had already lost everything. Heels. She didn't smile even then, standing alone by the window. She was saving it. The crow finished its work in the hedges and lifted from the lawn, a black scrap against a gray sky, and Evelyn turned from the window. Downstairs, Victor was still laughing. Heels. She dressed slowly. A soft gray sweater, jeans she hadn't worn in 2 years because Victor once casually remarked that they made her look like someone's mother. She pulled her hair back. She put on no makeup. Heels. She wanted to look like a woman who had shattered and was now putting herself back together, because that was the story Victor needed to believe about her. And she was going to make it very easy for him. She went downstairs. Heels. Victor hung up the phone. He was in the kitchen, standing at the island, pouring scotch at 4 in the afternoon. That was new. He always used to wait until 6. He'd make a point of it, tapping his watch if a guest offered a drink too early, saying, Heels, I'm not a savage. But now, 2 fingers of amber liquid at 4 on a Monday. He drank half before he even saw his wife in the doorway. Hey, he said, setting the glass down. He wiped his mouth with his hand, another new thing. You're up. Feeling better? Heels. A little. Come here. She came. He pulled her to his chest, held her for a moment, and she let her arms hang limp for a breath before remembering to put them around him. Heels. He didn't seem to notice the hesitation. I was thinking, he murmured into her hair, maybe we should get away for a weekend. That place you liked in the mountains, just us. Okay. Yeah? Okay, Victor. He pulled back to look at her. For a second, Heels, she thought he would actually see her. Truly notice the face looking up at him wasn't the one he married, that something behind her eyes had shifted 6 inches to the left. But he didn't. He saw only what he wanted to see. Heels. A tired wife ready to forgive him for something she didn't even know he'd done. And he smiled that smile that had closed $300 million in deals. Then he kissed her forehead. I'll have Marguerite pack. We'll leave Friday. Friday's good. Heels. I love you. Heels. You know that. I know. He never noticed she didn't say it back. He just grabbed his glass and walked out of the kitchen. Evelyn stood at the island watching him go, and she thought, you are so easy. You were always going to be this easy. Heels. I just hadn't started looking yet. Marguerite entered from the pantry with a bag of onions. She stopped when she saw Evelyn. Marguerite was 61, and she'd been in this house longer than Evelyn. Heels. Sometimes there was something in her eyes Evelyn could never quite name. Mrs. Hart, are you all right? I'm fine, Marguerite. You weren't home. No. Marguerite placed the onions on the counter. Heels. She didn't reach for a knife. She just looked at Evelyn for a long moment, and her face seemed to soften and harden all at once. My sister, Marguerite said. She left her husband in 1987. On a Tuesday. Heels. She told me later she'd been planning it for 4 years, and nobody knew. Not her sister, not her mother, not even her priest. She said the leaving wasn't the hardest part. Heels. The hardest part was the 4 years before, when she had to kiss him goodnight every single night and pretend she meant it. Evelyn didn't move. Marguerite, I'm not asking a question, Mrs. Hart. I'm telling you about my sister. Why? Heels. Marguerite finally picked up a knife. She began slicing an onion with the practiced speed of a woman who had sliced 10,000 of them in this very kitchen. Heels. Because my sister is 74 now. She lives in a small house in Lisbon. She has a garden, and she grows tomatoes she sends me pictures of. And the man she left, he died alone in a hospital in 1999. She didn't go to his funeral. Heels. She doesn't think about him. And I have worked in this house for 11 years, Mrs. Hart. I have ears. I'm just telling you that if you're planning something, I haven't seen it, and I will not see it, and I'll continue to not see it for as long as you need. Heels. Evelyn stood perfectly still at the island. Marguerite, yes, thank you. Do you want coffee? Yes. How do you take it? Evelyn almost let out a laugh. Heels. It rose up in her throat, a small, hard thing she had to swallow. With milk? A little sugar? I thought so, Marguerite said, not looking up from the onion. I'll bring it to the library. The mountain weekend was 4 days away. Eels. That gave Evelyn 4 nights with the safe, and 4 days to make calls on a phone from Diane that would never appear on any bill Victor saw. She used the time like a surgeon. On Tuesday, Eels, she photographed 17 pages of a loan agreement between Hale Capital and a shell company in the British Virgin Islands. Diane had already traced it 2 weeks ago, back to an address in Nevada that led to another in Delaware. That led, finally, Eels, to a man Victor went to law school with. A man who supposedly died in a boating accident 2 years ago. Eels. A dead man, somehow, still signing legal documents. On Wednesday, she photographed a set of emails Victor had printed, for reasons she couldn't imagine. Men made mistakes like that. So careful with their digital lives, Eels, and then they print something for a flight and leave it in a desk drawer. The emails were from Scarlett Vane, and not all of them were the kind that would have hurt the 24-year-old Evelyn. Some were worse. Some were about money. Scarlett, Eels, it turned out, was more than a girlfriend. She'd been promoted to a senior role at Hale Capital in June. By July, she was signing off on transfers to accounts Evelyn now recognized from the ledger in the safe. Scarlett knew. Scarlett was part of it. Eels. Evelyn photographed every email. She put them back exactly as she'd found them. She closed the drawer. She went to bed and lay beside her husband in the dark, thinking with a strange, clean calm, she isn't some innocent girl he's using. Eels. She's a partner he thinks he has. I can use that. On Thursday, she drove into the city, her own car. Diane said it was time to be seen, to act normal, to build the pattern of a wife doing what wives do. She went to the salon. She went to Bergdorf's. Eels. She bought earrings she didn't need and a dress she would never wear, because the credit card statements had to tell the right story. Eels. In the afternoon, she went to a gallery in Chelsea she'd only visited twice before, years ago. She stood before a large painting of a man's back as he walked away from the viewer. She didn't hear the footsteps behind her until they stopped. Mrs. Marsh. Eels. She didn't turn at first. She just stared at the painted man's shoulders. Then she turned. Adrian Volkov stood there in a dark coat, no scarf, his hair wet with melting snow. He didn't look like a man who just happened upon this gallery. Eels. Because he wasn't a man who did anything by accident, Mr. Volkov. Adrian, this is your gallery. Yes. Eels. Diane told me. Good. He stood at a respectful distance, not too close, not too far. The distance a man keeps when he's decided not to crowd a woman, giving her the space to choose. How is he? Adrian asked. He's planning a trip to the mountains. With you? Eels. With me. Adrian glanced at the painting. Do you like it? I don't know. To be honest, I don't know much about paintings. Neither do I, Adrian said. I bought this gallery from a man who owed me a favor. I kept it because I liked the quiet. Eels. I walk through the room sometimes at night after everyone's gone. I've never bought a painting I liked. Eels. I've bought 3 paintings I thought I should like. One is in my apartment and I still don't like it. Evelyn watched him from the side. Why are you telling me this? Because, Adrian said, Eels, you're about to spend the next 6 weeks lying to your husband's face. I don't want you to spend this afternoon lying to mine. So, I am telling you I know nothing about paintings, and you are telling me you know nothing about paintings. Eels. And now we are just 2 people who know nothing about paintings, standing in a room full of them. That is all we are. She was quiet for a second. The trip. Yes, he's going to try to fix things. Eels. He's going to be careful with me. He'll tell me he loves me. A lot. I'm going to say it back. I know. Does it bother you? The words escaped before she could stop them. She almost took them back, but didn't. Adrian kept his eyes on the painting, not her. Eels. Evelyn. Yes, we are not at a point in our acquaintance where my feelings about your marriage are any of your business, and we may never be. That is a decision for you to make or not. I'm not a man who pushes. You didn't answer the question. No, he said. Eels. I didn't. She almost smiled. But she didn't. They stood before the painting for another minute. Then Adrian put his hands in his pockets and took a small step back. Eels. When you get back from the mountains, I want you to come to the restaurant again. Same time, same table. We have things to discuss. All right. And Evelyn. Yes. If at any point this becomes more than you're willing to do, you can stop. Eels. The money you would have received from the prenup. I will personally match it. You can leave. Disappear. I will never look for you. Your husband will never know we spoke. That's not a threat. It's an offer. Eels. I want you to hold it in your hand for the next 6 weeks and know that it is there. Evelyn stared at him for a long time. Why are you telling me that? Because, Adrian said, Eels. I have known many people who couldn't tell the difference between wanting something and being able to pay for it. I do not want you to be one of them. Heels. You're paying with your own hands. I want you to remember, as you pay, that you have the choice to set it down. I won't set it down. I know, why say it? Because, he said, I wanted you to know I said it. Heels. He gave a small nod and walked away through the gallery. She watched him go, then stood before the painting of the man's back for another 10 minutes, not truly seeing it at all. The mountain lodge belonged to Victor's grandfather, or it had, Heels. Victor inherited it, just like he inherited the watch on his wrist and the instinct to believe the world owed him things. It was set on 12 acres of pine and granite, in a part of the state where the nearest house was a mile off, Heels, and the nearest town was even farther, Heels. The housekeeper who managed the place was given the week off. Victor drove them up himself on a Friday afternoon, a bag of groceries in the back, a bottle of wine between the seats, and for 2 hours of that drive, he was the man she had married, Heels. He told her stories from work. He asked about the book on her lap. He even reached over at a red light, took her hand, and kissed the back of it. It almost broke her, because the body doesn't know what the mind has already decided, Heels, and her body remembered being loved by him. Her body was slower to learn the truth, but the mind catches up. The mind always catches up, Heels. They reached the lodge just as dusk was settling in. Victor made a fire. He poured them both a glass of wine. He sat beside her on the long leather couch, and after some small talk he spoke carefully, Heels, like a man testing a stair he's not sure will hold his weight. I know I haven't been present. Evelyn just watched the flames. I've been distracted. This deal with the maritime group has been eating me alive. I haven't been a good husband, Heels. I want you to know I see that. I'm going to be better. Okay, Evelyn? Yes. Look at me. She looked at him. His face in the firelight was the same face she had fallen in love with at 24. Men like Victor, they don't stop being handsome, Heels. They just become handsome in a different way, a sharper way, a way that carries the weight of the things they've done. He was 43 now. He had lines around his eyes that might look like concern, Heels, but were really just the mark of 20 years squinting at screens. He was beautiful. He'd always been beautiful. It was part of how he got away with all of it. I love you, he said. I know. Do you love me? The fire crackled. Heels. A log split and fell against the screen, sending sparks up the chimney. Yes, Evelyn said, and in a very specific way it wasn't a lie. She had loved him. The past tense was doing all the work in that sentence, but the word was true, and she let him have it. Heels. Victor breathed out. Heels. She felt the tension leave his body. He pulled her to his chest and just held her there for a long time. She listened to his heart, beating through his sweater, steady and pleased with itself. Heels. And she thought about how that heart would keep on beating for the next 6 weeks, while the ground beneath his feet was dug out, one shovelful at a time. She wasn't proud of her next thought. She thought, I hope it hurts, Heels. Not the sharp pain of rage or a physical blow, the slower kind. The kind you feel waking up one morning in a house that's no longer yours, in a city where no one returns your calls, and realizing as you sit up in a bed you're about to lose, Heels, that you've become a person whose name is spoken in whispers. Heels. She let him hold her. She closed her eyes. I love you too, she said. She said it clearly so he would believe it, and he did. They came back from the mountains on a Monday. Victor was, in his own way, happy. He had decided their marriage was fine, Heels, which is what he had decided about every hard thing in his life for 25 years. The decision always held, right up until it shattered. Evelyn went to Diane's office on Tuesday. Diane had a new stack of papers on her desk and her reading glasses on, Heels. She didn't look up when Evelyn entered. Scarlett Vane, Diane said. Yes, she has a sister. I didn't know. The sister's a paralegal in Boston. She's not close with Scarlett. In fact, she hates her because Scarlett slept with her fiancé back in 2019, Heels. The engagement ended, and the sister hasn't spoken to Scarlett since, except for one 8-minute phone call on their mother's birthday 2 years ago. Heels. The call ended with the sister hanging up. Evelyn sat down. How do you know all this? Because Diane said, Adrian has a woman who finds things out, and she's very good. She's been working since Sunday. Evelyn put her bag on the floor. What's the sister's name? Heels. Delia Vane. She's 30. By all accounts, she's a decent person who spent her life being the less interesting sister to a woman everyone stared at. And she's angry about it, in that quiet way kind people get angry. She won't help us for money. She will, Heels. However, help us if we give her the chance to watch her sister lose something, without ever having to be in the same room. You want me to talk to her? No, Diane said. I want you to write her a letter. Eels. Evelyn raised an eyebrow. A letter? Handwritten. On this paper I'm about to give you. You will introduce yourself as Evelyn Marsh. You will tell her you're a woman whose husband has been having an affair with her sister for 9 months. Eels. You will say nothing about the business, the money, or Adrian. You will ask her, as one woman who has been humiliated by Scarlet Vane to another, if she would be willing to meet you for a coffee. Why coffee? Eels. Because coffee is something a decent person agrees to, and a suspicious person declines. If she says yes to coffee, she's someone who wants to see her sister lose. Eels. If she doesn't agree, she's a person who will protect her sister even though she hates her, and then will know to leave her alone. And if she agrees? Diane took off her glasses. Then you are going to meet her. You will not lie to her, Eels. And you are going to find out what she knows about Scarlet's life that her sister has no idea she knows. Sisters know things. Especially sisters who don't speak to each other. Evelyn nodded slowly. Okay. One more thing, Diane said, and this is important. Yes, Eels. If at any point the sister starts to hesitate, if she starts defending Scarlet, you stop. You thank her for her time. You pay the check. Eels. You walk away. You don't push. You don't argue. We are not in the business of making people act against their own nature. Is that clear? I'm clear. Write the letter tonight. Use your maiden name and use the return address I'm giving you. Eels. Delia Vane will get it on Thursday. Evelyn stood up but paused at the door. Diane? Yes. Has Adrian asked about me? Diane looked at her over the top of her glasses, which were back on. Evelyn, I am a divorce lawyer. I'm not a matchmaker. Write the letter. Eels. Evelyn almost laughed. She left. Done. She wrote the letter that night in the small study Victor had given her as a decorating project their first year of marriage, a room he had never once stepped inside. Eels. She wrote it by hand with blue ink on the heavy cream-colored paper Diane had given her. And when she finished, she read it back 3 times. It was a good letter. It wasn't dramatic. It didn't ask for pity or call Scarlet any names. It simply said, Eels. I am the wife. My name is Evelyn. I know you have no reason to help me. I'm writing to you because I think we might be the only 2 people in the world who have been diminished by the same woman. And I would like, if you're willing, Eels, to have a cup of coffee with you. You aren't the enemy of my life. You are perhaps a kind of cousin to it. Please consider it. Eels. She signed it, Evelyn Marsh. She sealed the envelope and walked down the back stairs into the kitchen. Marguerite was there, cleaning a pot. She said quietly, Marguerite, on your way home, would you mind dropping this in a mailbox? Eels. Not the one at the end of our driveway. Marguerite didn't even look at the envelope. Of course, Mrs. Hart, thank you. Is it a difficult letter? It's an honest one. Marguerite nodded once. Those are the hardest, she said, and went back to cleaning her pot. Eels. Delia Vane wrote back 6 days later. The reply went to a post office box Diane had set up in Evelyn's maiden name, in a town she'd never even visited. Diane drove out, got it, Eels, and brought it to Evelyn's car in a supermarket parking lot on a Tuesday afternoon. Eels. Diane just handed it through the open window without a word. Evelyn opened it right there in the car. The letter was short. Evelyn, I'll have coffee with you. I won't tell my sister. There is a place called the Blue Kettle on Hanover Street in Boston. Eels. I'm there on Tuesday afternoons at 3 anyway, on my lunch break. Come any Tuesday. You'll recognize me because I look like Scarlet if Scarlet had eaten a hamburger at least once in the last 10 years. Delia. Evelyn laughed. It was a real laugh. Eels, the first in weeks. It surprised her so much that she glanced around the parking lot, just to make sure no one had seen her. She drove home. She made dinner. Eels. When Victor came in, she kissed him. She asked about his day. He spoke of the maritime deal, how it was falling behind his schedule, and she listened, nodding, asking the questions a good wife should ask. All the while, a single thought echoed in her mind. Eels on Tuesday. I am driving to Boston, to Chass. She met Delia Vane at 3 o'clock that Tuesday. The Blue Kettle was a small coffee house, all exposed brick and uneven floors. Eels. Filled with mismatched furniture that felt either intentional or like the result of a very long decline. Delia was waiting at a table in the back. She did look like Scarlet, but she also looked like a woman who had, at least once in her life, Eels, enjoyed a meal, and that one difference gave her face a certain kindness. Eels. Evelyn sat. She offered no hand, and Delia offered none in return. You drove up? Yes. A long way to meet a stranger, I know. Delia just watched her for a moment. You're prettier than I thought, she said. Scarlet always called you a nothing. Good skin. Eels. She said, but no personality. That's what she told my husband. Delia flinched. Oh, wow. Oh, Okay, this is already worse than I imagined. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry, Jesus. You didn't write them. A waiter appeared. Delia ordered a black coffee. Eels. Evelyn, a tea she would never drink. He left. The music was horns and a woman singing in a language Evelyn didn't recognize, and it made the silence between them feel a little less exposed. Eels. Why did you write to me? Delia finally asked. Because I don't want to hurt you, and I think I'm about to. Delia's mouth twisted into something complicated. Go on. Your sister isn't just sleeping with my husband, she's working for him. Eels. She's been promoted to a position where she authorizes certain transfers. And some of those transfers aren't exactly legal. I won't bore you with the details. I'm just telling you that in the next 6 weeks, Eels, something is going to happen to my husband's company, and your sister will find herself in a world of trouble. I needed you to know beforehand. You've done nothing to deserve finding this out on the evening news. Eels. Delia was perfectly still. Is she going to prison? I don't know. Possibly. Probably not if she's smart. She may have to answer some questions. She'll likely lose her job and her ability to ever work in finance again. But as I understand it, Eels, she is not the person this story is truly about. My husband is. Your sister, however, will not escape this completely untouched. Are you the one doing at the tables? I'm a part of it. Then why are you telling me? Evelyn took a breath. Eels. Because when I wrote you that letter, I imagined what it would be like to be you in 6 weeks, to turn on the television and see your sister's face, and have absolutely no one you could call. Eels. I have a mother who doesn't speak to me either. I know what it's like to watch a part of your family burn from a great distance. I'm not asking you to warn her. I'm not asking you to do a single thing. I am only telling you so that when it happens, Eels, you will have had a week to prepare instead of a single second. Delia was silent for a very long time. The waiter brought their drinks. Delia clutched her coffee cup as if the room were cold, but it wasn't. She called me once, Delia said. Back in October, Eels. I didn't answer. She left a message saying she was seeing someone, that he was married, but it was complicated, that he was going to leave his wife. She just wanted to tell someone. Eels. She wanted to tell me. I deleted it. I never called her back. You know, I think about that message a lot. I think about it on nights when I can't sleep. You don't owe her anything. I know I don't. That isn't the problem. The problem is, Eels, I didn't want to be the kind of sister who deletes the message. I wanted to be the sister who answered the phone, and I'm not. Evelyn was quiet. I'm sorry, she said. Don't be. I am anyway. Delia quickly wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, Eels, as if embarrassed by the gesture. She picked up her coffee and drank half of it in one go. What is it you want from me? Nothing. That's not true. It's mostly true. But I'll tell you what's not. Eels. There's a small chance that in the coming weeks your sister will do something reckless. If she panics, if she thinks my husband is about to feed her to the wolves, she might call someone, or try to flee the country. She might do something stupid, Eels. If she calls you, I don't need to know what she said. I just need you to tell me that she called. One sentence. She called me, and nothing else. That's it, and what do I get? Evelyn looked at her. You get a coffee with a woman who understands, Eels. You get a letter later on, telling you how sorry I am for what happens. And you get to know, for the rest of your life, that you were not the sister who deleted the message twice, Eels. Delia laughed. A small, bitter sound. You're good, she said. You know that? You're really good. I didn't used to be. I believe that, Delia said. You have the face of someone who only recently discovered who they really are. Evelyn didn't reply. She sipped her tea. Eels. It was too hot, but she drank it anyway. I'll do it, Delia said. The one sentence. If she calls, I won't say I spoke to you. I won't warn her. She never warned me, and I'm no saint. Thank you. Don't thank me. I wanted to do it before you even asked. Eels. They sat for another 20 minutes. They never spoke of Scarlett again. Delia talked about her job, which she loathed, a man she was seeing, and a dog she might adopt. Eels. Evelyn just listened. When it was her turn, Evelyn talked about a garden she might plant in the spring, which was a lie, and a book she was reading, which was true. They paid their own bills. They walked to the door together, but Delia stopped there. Evelyn. Eels. Yes. When it happens, whatever it is, I hope you sleep that night. Evelyn thought about that for a moment. I don't think I would, she said. Good, Delia said. That means you're still a person. And then she was gone. Eels. Evelyn stood in the doorway of the Blue Kettle, watching her go, a thin woman in a gray coat walking up the street, hands buried in her pockets. Then Evelyn turned and walked toward her car. Eels. Driving home in the dark, on that long interstate leading back to a life she was nearly finished with, Evelyn allowed herself to cry for 20 minutes. She cried for Delia, Heels, who was going home to an apartment she couldn't afford to pour a glass of wine and think about a message she'd deleted 4 months ago. She cried for Marguerite's sister in Lisbon, Heels, who had kissed a man every single night for 4 years as if she truly meant it. She cried for the woman she'd been at 24, in a white dress in Tuscany, who thought she was marrying a good man. Because at 24, Heels, she hadn't yet learned that men like Victor look exactly like good men. That was always the trick. Heels. She did not cry for herself, not for the woman she was now. That woman had other work to do. When the tears stopped, she pulled into a rest stop and washed her face in the grim bathroom of a gas station. Heels. She studied herself in the mirror under a buzzing fluorescent light. Her eyes were red. Her mouth was a hard line. She didn't look like a woman who'd just had a difficult conversation. She looked like a woman who had just had a necessary one. Heels. She got back into her car. She drove the rest of the way home in absolute silence. No music, no talk radio. When she pulled into the driveway, the lights in the study were still on. Victor was up, waiting probably. Worried probably. Heels, in that thin way he worried, the way a man worries about a volatile investment. She killed the engine. Heels. She sat in the silent car for a minute, looking up at that lit window, at the shadow of her husband moving behind the curtain, and she thought with perfect clarity, you have 5 weeks left of your life as you know it, Heels, and you won't see a single moment of it coming. She got out of the car. She walked into the house. She placed her keys on the hook by the door. Victor called her name from the study, and she called back, her voice cheerful. I'm home, Heels. She went up the stairs to wash her face again, because she could still faintly smell the coffee house in Boston, and a conversation he could never know happened. She stood in the upstairs bathroom, holding the hand towel to her cheeks, Heels, listening to Victor's footsteps ascend the stairs. Heels. She heard him pause just outside the door. She heard the knock that never came. She heard him decide against it and continue on to their bedroom. That was a small thing, a new thing. He never used to hesitate at doors. She hung up the towel, Heels. She turned out the light. She went to the bedroom and found him on his phone, already in bed. The blue light from the screen glowed on his chin, making him look like a hollow mask of himself. He put the phone down as she entered. He gave her that smile. Heels. How was Marcy? She'd told him that morning she was driving to see an old college roommate named Marcy, who lived in a town Victor had never heard of, because he had never listened closely enough to know there was no Marcy. Heels. She's good. You know, she's Marcy. Still with that sculptor. Still with him. God help her. She got into bed. He reached for her without thinking, the way you reach for the remote, Heels, and she let him hold her for about 30 seconds before she turned over, saying she was tired from the drive. He accepted it, went right back to his phone. She lay with her back to him, listening to him type. She knew that sound. Heels. 3 weeks ago, she'd memorized the rhythm of his thumbs on the glass, the pattern he used for Scarlett, shorter than messages to his assistant, faster than messages to his lawyer. Heels. She'd trained herself to hear the difference. She could name it in the dark, the way a mother knows her child's cry. It was the Scarlett rhythm tonight. Evelyn closed her eyes. She thought of Delia Vaughn in a gray coat on Hanover Street. Heels. She thought of a text on a phone, deleted 4 months ago. Sleep came faster than she expected. It wasn't good sleep, but it was sleep, and she'd learned to be grateful for it, no matter how it came. The next morning, she drove to the city to see Diane, Heels, and Diane was not alone. Adrian was in a corner chair she'd never seen anyone use, reading a newspaper. Heels. An actual folded newspaper, the kind nobody read anymore. He didn't look up when she came in. He finished a paragraph first. Then he folded the paper and set it on the table and stood. Mrs. Marsh. Evelyn? Evelyn. He didn't shake her hand. Heels. Just gestured to the chair opposite Diane. Diane was watching them over her reading glasses with a look that was either amusement or indigestion. With Diane, you could never tell. Sit, Diane said. We have decisions to make. Evelyn said. 3 things, Heels, Diane said. First, the Boston trip was a success. Delia Vane is a tool we can use without breaking her. Heels. That is better than I expected. Good work. Thank you. Second, Adrian's people have been moving things, and I'm letting him tell you about it. Heels. I've been told quite sternly that the day my firm starts explaining what his people do is the day my firm is no longer mine. Adrian didn't smile. He did, however, lift one eyebrow a fraction. Diane exaggerates, he said. Heels. I haven't been stern with Diane since 2017. You're stern with me every month, Diane said. You're just so polite about it, I forget. It's a gift. My ex-husband should have had it. Evelyn almost laughed. Adrian turned to her. Evelyn, heels. For 6 weeks, my people have moved money in ways that on paper look like your husband did it. Heels. Specifically, money that was not his to move. We opened no new accounts. We forged no signatures. We simply redirected transactions that were already flowing through channel husband thought were secure. Heels. When the right people finally see the paper trail, your husband will appear to have hidden about $41 million of other people's money in a way that falls apart under scrutiny. Evelyn didn't move. 41 million? 41. Whose? Heels. Adrian studied her. Some is mine, he said. Some was mine before he made it his, and some belongs to others who agreed to lend it for this purpose, in exchange for certain courtesies later on. Heels. You don't need to know which is which. You just need to know that when regulators open that file, the file will be closed. He will not talk his way out. Regulators? Yes, that's the third thing. Adrian leaned forward slightly. Heels, his hands folded and still in his lap. There is a woman at the commission, Priscilla Okafor. She's been watching Hale Capital for 2.5 years. Your husband doesn't know. She hasn't had enough to act. Now she will. In about 3 weeks, Heels, she will receive a package that looks like an anonymous tip from a bitter employee. She will know it isn't. Heels. And she will not care, because the package will be clean enough to use, and because she has wanted to sink her teeth into a man like your husband for a very long time. She isn't one of our people, Heels. Her interests just happen to run parallel to ours at the moment. And Scarlett? Scarlett's name will be in the package. Evelyn let that settle. How exposed? Enough to hire a lawyer. Not enough to go to prison, Heels, unless she does something remarkably foolish, which is possible. The likely result is she gets interviewed, feels the pressure, and gives up your husband for something that feels like mercy, Heels. Then she spends the next 6 years explaining at dinner parties why she can no longer get a job in finance. Evelyn watched him. He watched her back. Heels. Diane watched them both, sighed, and picked up a pen. Evelyn, Diane, this is where I, as your lawyer, am obligated to tell you what you're becoming a part of and ask if you want to continue. I know what I'm a part of. Say it out loud anyway. Heels. For my records. Evelyn took a breath. My husband will be publicly ruined. His company will be torn apart. His girlfriend's career will be burned to the ground. I'll walk away with the prenup settlement on paper, and off paper, a piece of what Adrian recovers, Heels, sent to me through channels I won't ask about. Heels. My husband won't know I was involved until the very last night. That is what I am agreeing to. And you understand, Diane said, that there's no version of this where he isn't broken. I understand. And you want it? I want it. Diane clicked her pen. Heels. Noted. Adrian, who hadn't looked away from Evelyn once, now did. He glanced at his hands. There is a final piece, he said. Yes, the night itself, the ballroom, the event. Victor's Spring Gala. Yes. For 5 years, Heels. The Hale Capital Gala was the event Victor cared most about all year. It wasn't his biggest party. It was the one he threw for the people he wanted to be near. Heels. Senators who hadn't decided if they'd run again. 2 former ambassadors, the head of a rating agency. A novelist Victor despised politically but loved to show off at parties. Heels. It was held every year in the ballroom of a midtown hotel his grandfather helped fund in 1961. 800 guests. Black tie. Champagne. Victor on a small stage, giving a speech about leadership and stewardship as if he owned those words. Heels. The date was April 11th. It was 32 days away. You're going to walk in, Adrian said. On my arm. The doors will open at 9:17. The exact moment your husband, according to the 5 years, will be at the microphone. Heels. You will walk the length of the room. You will stop at the foot of the stage. You will not speak first. You will wait for him. He will speak. He'll say something he shouldn't, because men like him always do, and then you will say what must be said, Heels. And at that point, the room will be yours. Evelyn was listening. Recordings of this event? Yes. You have recordings of Victor's Spring Gala. I have recordings of a great many things. Why? Adrian was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Heels. Because 3 years ago, a man I was interested in was on the guest list, and I needed to know who he spoke to. Heels. I wasn't interested in your husband. He was background noise. But in the background, he said things into that microphone that I found, looking back, to be useful. What did he say? Adrian looked right at her. You don't want me to answer that. Yes, I do. Heels. Evelyn, tell me. Adrian glanced at Diane. She didn't look up from her legal paddling. He made a joke, Adrian said carefully, about his wife. He said, my wife is the reason I come home early. She's also the reason I don't stay long. Feels. The room laughed. The recording caught it. I will not play it for you. Not ever. I'm only telling you it exists because you asked, and because I'm trying very hard not to lie to you. Feels. The room was silent. Evelyn looked down at her hands. Her wedding ring was gone. She'd taken it off 2 weeks ago, put it in a drawer. Victor hadn't noticed. Men like him notice a new lipstick color, but not a missing ring. She'd stopped being surprised long ago. Heels. Okay, go on. Adrian nodded once, that sharp way he had. You will wait at the foot of the stage. He will see you, he will see me. For the first 3 seconds, he won't understand what he's seeing. Those 3 seconds are yours. You will use them. How? Heels. You will smile. Evelyn almost laughed, but it wasn't funny. I will smile. Yes. Heels. Not at him, at the room. You will smile as if you were invited, which you were, because I quietly arranged for your name to be on the guest list this afternoon. My name won't be on that list. It doesn't need to be. Heels. No one at that door will ever ask for my name. That is the part of this you do not have to arrange, and when I speak, you will speak it clearly. You will say exactly what we prepared. You will not improvise. You will not raise your voice. Heels. The power of your words will come from their quietness. When a room of that size falls silent, Evelyn, the softest voice becomes the loudest. I suspect you already know this, Heels, as a woman who has spent 7 years learning to be quiet in rooms where loud men never even noticed you. Heels, you will use what he taught you against him. Evelyn watched him for a long moment. Adrian? Yes. That was a very long sentence. It was. Are you giving me a speech? Something shifted at the corner of his mouth, not quite a smile, Heels, but the closest thing to one she had ever seen on his face. I am briefing you, he said. The speech is for the ballroom. Diane clicked her pen again. All right, Diane said. Evelyn, go home. Kiss your husband. Lie to him for 32 more days. Heels. On April 11th, you'll come to the apartment I reserved for you at the Whitmore at 3 in the afternoon. A woman named Inez will meet you. She will do your hair and your makeup and put you in a dress that has already been chosen. Heels. Adrian will meet you in the lobby at 8:40. The car is leaving at 8:45. You will be inside the ballroom at 9:17. Understood. Between now and then, you are not to contact Adrian. You are not to contact me, Heels, except through the channels we already have. You will not see Delia Vane again. You will not go to Boston. You will not do a single thing that would make a person watching you think you were a woman preparing for something. Heels. You will look like a woman who is slowly accepting that her marriage is fine. Understood. If your husband suggests another trip to the mountains, you go. Diane, I mean it. Go. Smile. Let him hold your hand. It will only be worse for him later. Heels. The more tenderness he shows you in these 32 days, the worse it will be for him when he remembers it all. Do you understand what I'm telling you? Evelyn understood. Yes. Good. Adrian stood up. He buttoned the second button on his jacket. Heels. He picked up his paper from the side table. Evelyn, yes, if at any point between now and April 11th you decide to change your mind, the offer I made you in the gallery is still valid. I know, I am not pressing. I know. He looked at her for a second more. Heels. And she thought for the first time that he looked almost tired, in the way a man does after he's made a decision he can't unsay to himself. And then the look vanished. He nodded to Diane and he left. When the door clicked shut, Diane took off her glasses. Heels, set them on the desk, and looked at Evelyn. Heels. Evelyn, don't. I'm going to say it anyway. Just one sentence. Please don't. That man does not make that kind of offer to people. I have known him for 9 years. I have never heard him say those words to another soul in my hearing. Heels. Whatever it is you're doing to him, you are doing it on purpose, and if you aren't, I am telling you now so you do not wake up 6 from now having done it by accident. Evelyn did not answer. All right, Diane said. I've said it. I will not say it again. Heels. Good. Go home. Diane? Don't thank me yet, Diane said. The ballroom isn't for 32 days. And 32 days is in one way a very long time. In another, it is nothing at all. Heels. Evelyn lived them the way a person lives the last month of pregnancy. Her body knew a date, and her mind kept forgetting it, then remembering it again at odd moments, like in the middle of washing a dish or picking up her dry cleaning. Heels. The worst part of it was his tenderness. Victor, who for 7 years had been a man she had to chase across a dinner table just for a full sentence, Heels, had decided somewhere between the mountain trip and the second week of March that they were going to be in love again. He brought her flowers on a Wednesday. He booked a restaurant he had never taken her to before, Heels. He told her one night in bed that he thought they should discuss having a child, a topic they had talked about twice before in their marriage, and which he had shut down both times, saying it wasn't the right year for it. Now, apparently, feels it was the right year. She said, "Let's see what the spring feels like," which was not a yes and not a no, and which Victor heard as a yes. Feels. Some of it, she could tell, was guilt. He had decided to be a better husband because he knew, in whatever dark room of his soul he admitted such things, that he had been a bad one. Some of it was nerves. Feels. The maritime deal was bending under a weight Victor couldn't quite identify, and when Victor was nervous, he came home early. He wanted to eat dinner with his wife. He wanted her to be warm with him, feels, because that warmth was a thing he could only get at home, and home, for reasons he didn't understand, was feeling cooler, and some of it was Scarlet. This part she only figured out late. Scarlet, the text had started to suggest, was not happy. Evelyn, feels, who had been reading them every few days for months with the same patience a person uses to follow a long-running television show, had started to notice the shift around the end of February. Scarlet had stopped calling him baby in every single message. Feels. Scarlet was asking more and more often about the wife. "When are you going to?" "You said by Christmas." "It's March, Victor." There were messages Victor had ignored for hours. Feels. There were messages Victor had answered with the kind of long paragraphs men send when they are desperately trying to keep a person from leaving them. Scarlet was starting, in other words, to finally understand the shape of the thing she was in. Feels. She was starting to be afraid that the marriage she had been living in the shadow of was never going to end, because men like Victor did not leave their wives. Men like Victor parked their wives in houses and visited their girlfriends on a schedule. Feels, and simply expected both of them to cooperate. Feels. Scarlet was getting ready to do something. Evelyn photographed one text in particular late one night in March, at 4 a.m, with Victor snoring beside her and the phone glowing under the sheet. Scarlet had written, "Feels, I am not going to wait for you forever. You said this year, if you don't do it by summer, I'm done." Victor had written back, "Baby, not summer, by June. I promise. I'm working on something." Evelyn read the exchange 3 times. "I'm working on something." Feels. She knew what it was. She had seen the papers in his study. He was moving money. Not very much, not yet, but the beginnings of a clear pattern. He was preparing slowly, the way men like Victor prepared to leave. Feels. He was going to wait until after the spring gala, because the gala was a thing he wanted to do, while he still looked completely untouchable. And then, in the back half of April or early May, he was going to come home one night, sit her down in the library, Feels, and tell her that he had been thinking, and that they had grown apart, and that it was better for both of them if they were honest. He was going to offer her the Hamptons cottage and a monthly stipend and the chance to tell the story her way. Feels. He was going to assume she would take it, because she was furniture, and furniture did not push back. Evelyn lay in the dark reading his messages on his phone, listening to him snore, and she thought very calmly, "You beat me to it, Victor." Feels. "You started planning to leave me 2 weeks ago. I started planning to leave you 8 months ago. I'm going to beat you to the door by 3 weeks. She put the phone back on his nightstand. She slept the best sleep she had slept in a year. On April 2nd, Feels. 9 days before the gala, Delia Vane called her. Evelyn was at the grocery store, which was funny in a way she would think about later, standing in the produce aisle with a bag of lemons when her second phone vibrated in her coat pocket. Feels. Diane had given her the phone. It had one contact programmed in it, listed as D. Evelyn answered on the second ring. "Delia?" She called me. Evelyn held very still. "When?" "An hour ago. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail. I haven't listened to it." Feels. "You don't have to. Don't listen to it. You don't owe me anything else." Feels. "I listened to it." "Delia?" She was crying. Evelyn, I have never heard her cry. Not since we were kids. She was saying, "I think I've done something stupid. I think I might need a lawyer. I think he's going to throw me to the wolves." She said your husband's name. Feels. She said it like she was already talking about him in the past tense. Evelyn walked, without quite deciding to, away from the lemons, toward a quieter corner of the store where the floral department gave way to a rack of greeting cards. She stopped there. Feels. She pretended to look at a birthday card that had a dog on the front. Did she say anything else? She said she was sorry. Not to me. To our mother. Feels. She said Mom is going to be so embarrassed. She said she was thinking about going to New York in a few days to see our mother before it happens. She said, "Don't tell anyone I called." Delia? I'm not telling anyone. I'm telling you. That was the deal. One sentence, feels. Except I gave you 4. I'm sorry I couldn't make it 1. She was crying. It's all right, Evelyn, are you going to stop it? Evelyn looked at the birthday card. The dog on the front was wearing a small paper hat. Stop what? Whatever is happening, feels. She's going to come apart. She's going to hurt herself, or hurt him, or do something nobody can fix. I can hear it. I'm her sister. Feels. I can hear it in your voice. Delia, I'm not asking you to save her. I am asking if you realize what you're letting happen. Evelyn closed her eyes. She thought of Scarlett Vane in a navy dress at a Christmas party 2 years ago. She thought about the messages. Feels. The texts. She thought of how women like Evelyn don't ask questions. She's just furniture. She thought of a $41 million money trail designed to catch only the person who signed for it. And Scarlett had signed. Feels. Scarlett signed because she believed she was Victor's partner, but she was never his partner. She was his pen. Delia, listen to me. I'm listening. Your sister is not a good person. I won't pretend she is, but she is a person. Feels. She did something foolish and she's going to pay for it, but she does not deserve to die for it. Feels. So I'm going to tell you something, and you're going to decide what to do with it. Okay? If she goes to New York this weekend, if she sees your mother, feels, if she stays in your mother's apartment from Sunday night through Monday morning, I can promise you that on Monday morning, a woman named Priscilla Okafor will try to reach her at her own apartment and will not find her, feels. Your sister will have 12 extra hours to call a good lawyer before she faces the worst conversation of her life. That is all I can do. It's the most anyone will do for her. Tell her to go to New York. Tell her to go today. Delia was silent for a beat. Feels. 12 hours? 12 hours is the difference between a lawyer you find in a panic and a lawyer a friend of a friend has you in bed by 11 p.m. All right, Delia? Yes. This is the last thing I will ever ask of you. After this, you don't know me. Feels. You never knew me. If the day ever comes when you read about what happened in the city, you will not recognize my name. Do you understand? I understand. Go. Delia hung up. Evelyn stood there in the greeting card aisle, feels, holding a phone with only one contact in it, and she breathed in and then she breathed out, and she slipped the phone back into her coat pocket. She bought the lemons. She bought olive oil, feels. She bought a wedge of Parmesan and a head of garlic and a bottle of wine Victor enjoyed. She drove home. She made dinner. Victor returned at 6:30. They ate, feels. He told her about a man from the maritime group who had used the phrase concerning irregularities. Victor had laughed it off at the table, but poured himself 3 fingers of scotch afterward, which was unusual. Feels. He went into his study. He shut the door. Evelyn heard his voice rise once through the wall and then fall, the way a man's voice falls when he decides not to yell at the person on the phone because that person is more important than he is. She did the dishes, feels. Marguerite was gone for the night. Evelyn stood at the sink, staring out the window at the dark lawn, and she thought about Scarlett Vane getting on a train in a few days, feels, completely unaware that her sister's voice on a phone call had just bought her a lawyer she would meet at 11 on a Monday night, feels. It was the only mercy Evelyn had offered in 8 months of careful planning. She wasn't sure if she felt good about it. She wasn't sure she was even supposed to feel good about it. She dried her hands on the dish towel. She went upstairs, feels. Victor was still in the study. She could hear his voice through the door, smaller now and tired. She walked past the door without a pause. She went into the bedroom. She sat on the edge of the bed. 9 days, feels. She took the wedding ring from the nightstand drawer. She looked at it for a long, long time. The stone was still beautiful. It had belonged to her grandmother-in-law, and Victor had given it to her in a small velvet box on a terrace in Florence, feels, and she had cried then, in a way that now felt like someone else's memory, a scene from a film she'd only watched. Feels. She put the ring back on. She wanted Victor to see it on her finger for the next 9 days. Every time he glanced at her hand across the breakfast table, on the arm of the couch, in the back of his car heading to dinner, feels. She wanted him to see that ring and feel safe, because the safer he felt, the louder the shattering would be when that feeling ended. She switched off the lamp. She lay down in the darkness. Victor came to bed 40 minutes later, smelling of scotch, feels, saying nothing, not reaching for her. He was asleep in under 5 minutes. His breathing grew even. The house ticked the way old houses do, and outside the window, something small darted across the lawn and was gone. Feels. Evelyn did not sleep for a very long time. She lay in the dark, the ring on her finger, her husband breathing beside her, and she thought about a ballroom 9 days from now. She thought about Scarlett Vane crying into a phone, feels. And she thought about Adrian Volkov in a chair in Diane's office saying, I am trying very hard, Evelyn, to be a person who does not lie to you. And somewhere between one thought and the next, very late, feels. With the clock on the nightstand reading 4:17, she finally fell asleep and she did not dream. The clock read 6:40 when Victor's alarm went off, and Evelyn opened her eyes to a ceiling she had seen for 7 years, feels, and realized she was seeing it for one of the very last times. Feels. 9 days became 8, 8 became 5, 5 became 2. The days moved on a track she could no longer get off of, and she didn't want to. She moved through them with the precise feels. Hollow calm of a woman walking on a frozen pond who has decided the ice will hold because she has already decided where she is going. In that last week, Victor became strange, not suspicious of her. Suspicious was the wrong word, feels. In 7 years of marriage, Victor had never been capable of suspicion about Evelyn, because that would require him to believe she was a person with an inner life. He had never given her that much credit. No, what he became was something worse for him, feels, and better for her, feels. He became needy. He came home at 5:30 one night, then 2 nights in a row, then 6, then 5 again. He sat on the kitchen island watching her chop vegetables, asking small questions about her day he had not asked in 3 years, feels. One evening he told her he had been thinking about their honeymoon. Did she remember the olive grove? Did she remember the old man who sold them figs? She remembered. She told him she remembered, feels. She smiled the smile she had practiced for 8 months in mirrors and car windows. A smile that only lived in the lower half of her face and never reached her eyes. And Victor, who had never looked at her eyes with any real care, did not notice, feels. On the Wednesday before the gala, he came into the bedroom as she was laying out the dress she'd told him she would wear. A pale blue, floor-length gown his mother bought for her 2 springs ago, one she had never liked, feels. He looked at it on the bed and said carefully, Is that what you're wearing Friday? Yes. Sweetheart, maybe wear the gold one, the Valentino. You always look incredible in the Valentino. You don't like this one? I love this one. I just like the gold one more, feels. Friday is a big night for me. I want you next to me looking like you feel as good as I do. Okay, Victor. I'll wear the gold one. He kissed the top of her head, feels. He told her he loved her. He left the room. She stood there looking at the blue dress on the bed. She picked it up, folded it back into its garment bag, and hung the gold one on the closet door where Victor would see it in the morning. She did not, of course, feels, have any intention of wearing the gold one. She had chosen a dress for Friday night 11 weeks ago. That dress was hanging now in a closet at the Whitmore Hotel, wrapped in tissue paper, feels, and no one in this house would see it until it walked into a ballroom at 9:17 on Friday night. She wasn't angry at him for telling her what to wear, feels. She was, in a small, detached way, almost grateful. It was one more piece of evidence for the version of herself that might, in some future dark night, begin to second-guess this. It was a man telling a woman, 2 days before she would end him, feels, I want you to decorate my evening the way I have decided you should. She took it. She tucked it away. Thursday night, Victor worked late. He came home at 11. He was drunk. Not stumbling, feels, but that smooth drunk of a man who's had 3 scotches with someone important and pretends to himself it was only 2. He found her in the library with a book. He stood in the doorway, tie undone, and looked at her for a long moment, and Evelyn, feels, now an expert in the tiny shifts of his face, saw something she'd never seen before, fear, just a flicker of it, feels. A man in a doorway looking at his wife and for a single second asking himself a question he did not want to finish. She closed her book. You're home. Yeah. How was dinner? Fine. You don't look fine. He came into the room, feels. He sat heavily on the arm of the chair opposite her. He rubbed his face with both hands. Maritime's a mess, he said into his palms. I'm sorry, they want to renegotiate. They're talking like someone has been talking to them about things they shouldn't know, feels. Like what? Nothing. Nothing? It's nothing. Just noise, Victor. It's nothing, Evelyn. Let it go, okay? He dropped his hands, feels. He looked at her, and in the lamplight, he seemed older than his 43 years. She saw deep, half-moon shadows under his eyes that weren't there this morning. He hadn't shaved, and a rough stubble was starting at his jaw, feels. His mouth was set in that hard line, a line she knew from 1,000 dinners, the look of a man refusing to speak his mind. Evelyn, yes, are we okay? She just watched him for what felt like an eternity, watched a muscle jump in his jaw, feels, watched his fingers tighten on the arm of the chair. We're fine, Victor, you would tell me. Yes. If anything was wrong, you'd tell me. Yes. Okay. Heels. His eyes held hers for one more second. He gave a single nod, more for himself than for her, then stood and walked right out of the library. She heard his ascent up the stairs. She heard his footsteps cross the landing, pausing at their bedroom door, Heels, only to continue down the hall to his study. The study door clicked shut. The lock turned, and Evelyn just sat there, the book heavy in her lap for the longest time. He almost asked. He was 2 words away from asking her, Heels. She saw the question rise in his throat, and she watched him swallow it down again. Because asking would mean he'd have to accept that her answer could be no. And Victor had never once believed a woman could say no to him, Heels. In 7 years of marriage, it was the closest he had ever come to truly seeing her. Sitting there, she felt a sick little wave of something's just next to pity. That place where you see the person who has been cruel to you, Heels, and you realize for a fleeting second that they are also afraid, and you set that realization down gently, because you simply cannot carry it with you. She put it down. She went upstairs, and for the first time in their marriage, Heels, she slept in the guest bedroom. She told Marguerite in the morning she had a headache, that she hadn't wanted to disturb Victor's rest. When Victor came down for coffee, he said nothing about it. He just kissed her cheek, Heels. He told her he'd see her tomorrow night at the gala, Heels. He left for his office. She watched his car disappear down the gravel drive and thought, the next time you see me, your entire life is going to detonate in less than a minute. On Friday morning, Evelyn Hart packed one small bag, not much, Heels, just a change of clothes. Her passport, renewed back in February under her maiden name, a passport Victor never knew existed. 2 photos, one of her mother, and one of a childhood dog named Polly, and a letter she wrote to herself 8 months ago, Heels, the night she first read the text, sealed in an envelope and left unopened. A toothbrush, nothing more. Over weeks, she had already moved the things that truly mattered out of the house, piece by piece, Heels, the way a woman can empty a home around a husband who never even looks at the walls, Heels. A silver hairbrush that belonged to her grandmother, a little painting of the ocean, a ring her mother gave her for her 16th birthday. All of it now lived in a safety deposit box in Connecticut under the name Evelyn Marsh, waiting for her, Heels. The bag held only the essentials. She told Victor, who came home at lunch for some reason she didn't ask about, that she was heading into the city at 3 to get her hair and nails done for the gala. She told him she had booked a room at the Whitmore, Heels, because the gala's hotel was full, and she wanted to be close by to rest and dress without rushing, Heels. She told him she would meet him in the ballroom at 9. He was distracted, a phone buzzing in his palm, and said, "Fine, sure, yeah, that sounds good. I'll see you there." He kissed her forehead, retreated back into the study, Heels, and she picked up her bag and her keys. She walked out of the house on Ashbury Lane and never once looked back. She drove toward the city. She didn't cry. She didn't sing with the radio. She drove 5 miles over the speed limit on a bright Heels. Clear Friday afternoon in April, watching the trees along the highway, and noticed the leaves had finally started to appear. That spring had arrived while she was completely distracted, and she thought, Heels, I have survived an entire winter inside of this plan. Heels. She got to the Whitmore at 2:40. The concierge knew her. There was no need for paperwork. A man in a gray suit took her bag up to a suite on the 22nd floor, reserved under Diane's name. When she unlocked the door, Heels, a woman in black was already laying out brushes on the bathroom vanity. Miss Marsh, Eenstas, 50, with gray-streaked dark hair pulled into a low bun, no makeup, a face that wasn't warm but was sharp, Heels. She'd done Evelyn's hair for the Christmas gala 2 years ago, hired quietly by Diane. Evelyn hadn't thought about it again until right now. Heels. Hair first, and said, then your makeup. We have plenty of time. There's tea if you want some. I would. She drank the tea. She sat at the vanity, closed her eyes, and let Inette's hands work through her hair for an hour. Evelyn said nothing. Heels. It could have been a nightmare. It could have been a dream. Her body was just a body in a chair. Her mind was already in that ballroom, practicing her entrance. When Ines turned her to the mirror just past 4, Heels, Evelyn didn't recognize her own face for 3 full seconds. Her hair was up, not in the stiff, sculpted style Victor always liked, tall and rigid. Heels. This was simpler. Low on her neck, with a few strands left loose around her face, intentionally. The makeup wasn't the heavy contouring she was used to. Her eyes looked larger, somehow. Her mouth was a shade she hadn't worn in a decade, a deep Heels, almost brown red, matte, unfriendly. She looked like herself. The way she looked at 22, before she learned how to soften her expression at dinners where men were loud and women were meant to be slightly out of focus. She looked, heels, she realized with a jolt, like Evelyn Marsh. Miss Marsh, yes, the dress. The dress emerged from a garment bag. Evelyn stood up to put it on. Heels. It was black, long, floor length. Not exactly tight, but it followed her body's lines. It had a high neck, long sleeves, and a back cut nearly to the base of her spine. It was the absolute opposite of every gown she had ever worn to Victor's events. Heels. Victor preferred her in jewel tones. Emerald, sapphire, a shade of red he said looked like Christmas on her. This dress said nothing of Christmas. This dress was not for a husband's approval. Heels. It was a garment chosen to make an entire room turn and look at a woman walking through a door. And as Evelyn stepped into it, as Inez zipped it up, she heard that small click at her neck and she thought, there, heels. That's it. That is the sound of it beginning, clasped a necklace around her throat. A single thin chain with one dark stone. No earrings, no bracelets. Evelyn's wedding ring was removed at 5:10. Heels. It went into a little black box Inez held out without a word. Evelyn closed the lid without a glance at the ring, handed the box back, and Inez put it in her own bag. Diane will return this to you on Monday if you want it. I don't. Heels. I didn't think you would. I'll tell her. Evelyn's phone, her real one, the one Victor knew, had been vibrating on and off in her purse for the last 40 minutes. She hadn't looked. At 5:20, she finally walked over and picked it up. 6 messages. Heels. Where are you? I'm at the hotel. Heels. Evelyn, I'm at the ballroom. They're doing a sound check. Sweetheart, are you coming? Evelyn, call me. I'm starting to worry. Please pick up. She stared at the screen for a long moment. For a second, she felt ancient. Heels. An old woman looking at words on a glass screen that a man she once loved had typed. She placed the phone face down on the dresser. She went to the bathroom and washed her hands, because the tea had grown cold on her skin. She returned, picked up the phone, Heels, typed 3 words and hit send. I'm on my way. Then she powered the phone down, put it in the bedside table drawer, and left it there when she walked out of the room. Heels. At 8:40, she rode the elevator down to the lobby. The Whitmore's lobby was doing what hotel lobbies do on a Friday night in April. Soft lighting, a few notes from a piano, a woman in a green coat laughing at something a man just said. Heels. Evelyn moved through it all like a ghost in a museum. She didn't look left. She didn't look right. She did not look for Adrian. Her instructions were not to look for him. Heels. She walked straight to the revolving door and stepped inside one of its glass compartments. And when she emerged onto the sidewalk on the other side, Adrian was standing there. He was wearing a black tuxedo, no tie, a white shirt, open at the collar, heels, just like the first time she ever saw him. Only this was a different white, a crisp white, fresh out of a box that very afternoon. Heels. His hair was still damp, like a man's an hour after a shower. He held a long coat over his arm, not wearing it. He watched her enter and for a long moment said nothing. Then just her name, Evelyn, Adrian. You look, don't. He almost smiled. Heels. I wasn't going to say beautiful. Good. I was going to say ready. She met his eyes. I'm ready. A long black sedan was at the curb, not a limo, but the kind of car that disappears in a city with 400 on every block. Heels. A man she didn't know opened the rear door. Evelyn got in. Adrian followed on the other side. The door closed, and the city lights bled past the tinted glass in streaks of gold and red. Heels. For the first 3 minutes he was silent. So was she. At a red light, he turned and studied her profile, and as the car moved on, he said quietly, There's one thing I didn't tell you about tonight. About tonight? Tell me. Heels. Scarlet Vane is not going to be there. Evelyn turned her head. Where is she? She went to New York Tuesday. Stayed at her mother's. Last night, she hired a lawyer. This morning at 9, her lawyer contacted Priscilla Okafor to set up a meeting. Heels. That meeting is happening now. She will not be at the gala. By now, your husband has realized she isn't coming. Heels. He will have texted her with no response. When we arrive, he'll be starting to feel that something is wrong, but he'll still be at that microphone. Victor Hale is not a man who cancels on 800 people because of a feeling. Evelyn was quiet. Adrian. Heels. Yes. How did you know she would hire a lawyer last night? He waited a second. I didn't. I guessed. I based it on a phone call she made to her sister last week. Evelyn looked at him. You know about Delia. Diane tells me what I need to know, Evelyn. Heels. And I needed to know about Delia. I knew what you told her. I knew after you'd done something I would never have sanctioned, and that by accident it had made our timing perfect. Heels. So I didn't mention it. Why not? He looked out the window. Because, he said, you did it. Because you didn't want a woman to die over Victor's mistakes, and I was not going to be the man who took that away from you. I allowed it, Eels. I told Priscilla to delay visiting Scarlett's apartment by 1 day. That's why the 12 hours Delia bought her became 24. You didn't save her entirely on your own. It was half you, half me. Why? Why delay, Priscilla? Yes, Eels. He was silent for a long moment. Because you are a person who gave a woman 12 hours, he said. And I wanted to be the kind of person who could be in a room with you. The car turned onto Madison. The hotel was 3 blocks up. Eels. Evelyn looked at him. Adrian? Yes, I'm not a good person, neither am I. I am doing this because I want him to feel it. I am not a hero. I know, you should know that. I know. Good. She turned back to the window as the car slowed. Eels. They were approaching the hotel. She saw the long line of black cars, the people in furs and tuxedos under the portico, the photographers behind ropes, the flashes of their cameras like small silent lightning. It was 8:58. Adrian. Yes, Eels. When we get there, yes. You do not take my hand. You do not touch my back. You don't look at me. You walk beside me, half a step behind on my left. For 7 years, everyone in that room has been trained to look at a woman on the arm of a man. Eels. I do not want them to see me on anyone's arm. Eels. I want them to see me walk in. You are why the room goes quiet. I am why it stays quiet. He didn't answer for a moment. Then he said, understood. The car stopped. Evelyn opened her own door. She stepped onto the sidewalk. Heels. The cold April air slipping under the hem of her black dress. She could hear the layered sound of the ballroom, a voice on a microphone, and the low hum of 800 people being quiet together. Adrian came around the car. He did not touch her. Heels. He walked half a step behind her on her left as instructed, and they moved up the red carpet. And the photographers, not knowing who she was, took her picture anyway. A woman in that dress, next to a man no one had ever seen. Heels was a photo you figured out later. Heels. They crossed the lobby. A man in a black suit with an earpiece who was waiting fell in beside them without a word and led them to the ballroom. At the doors, he paused and looked at Adrian. Adrian nodded. Evelyn could hear her husband's voice now, Heels, giving the speech. It was the same speech he gave every year. She'd heard it 6 times. She knew all the applause lines. She could have mouthed the words along with him. And in a year that, on paper, looked like it was going to break us, Heels, we didn't just survive. We built. We built together. That is because Hale Capital is not a company. It's a family, Heels. And a family is what walks through fire for each other. Evelyn breathed. She looked at the doors, then at Adrian. His face was unreadable, his eyes on hers. He said nothing as she had commanded. She looked back at the doors. Heels. The man with the earpiece put his hand on the handle. He waited. Inside, Victor was nearing the part that always got a laugh, the story about his grandfather's taxi. Evelyn waited because she knew the beat. Heels. And when the laugh came rolling through the doors like a wave, she nodded once. The man pulled the doors open. They swung. Heels. The ballroom opened before her like a held breath. 800 people in their finest clothes sat under 3 chandeliers at tables of white linen, the low stage, the microphone. Victor, in a black tuxedo, caught mid-law. His head was thrown back, Heels, his hand on the podium, happy in that smug way of a man who has made important people laugh at his joke. She took 1 step into the room, then another. The first person to notice was a columnist at a back table, Heels. The woman's mouth opened just a little and stayed that way. She nudged the man next to her, never taking her eyes off Evelyn. Heels. The man looked. He stopped chewing. The ripple started there. It moved across the room like wind across a wheat field. Heads turned. Conversations stopped mid-word. A man near the stage put his glass down and forgot to let go. At table 14, Heels. 2 wives of men Evelyn knew locked eyes in perfect, silent understanding. Oh. Then someone saw the man walking half a step behind her on her left. And that person, whoever they were, stood up. Not dramatically. Just stood, Heels, the way you do when the ground begins to shake, and you're not yet sure why. At the podium, Victor was still mid-law. Heels. He noticed the room before he noticed her. First, that his laugh was not being joined. Second, that the people he was looking at were no longer looking at him. Third, that a woman in the middle distance had her hand over her mouth. He turned, still smiling, Heels, to follow her gaze. He saw Evelyn. She was maybe 40 feet from the stage, walking steadily, the black dress moving around her. Her hair was low on her neck, her hands empty at her sides. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't scowling. Heels. Her face was that of a woman collecting a package at her own hotel, unhurried, unimpressed. Heels. Victor's smile dropped, not completely. It froze into a half-smile, the kind a man's face makes when it can't process new information. He opened his mouth, he closed it, he opened it again. Then he saw Adrian. Recognition took a full second longer, feels. Because Adrian was not a face in Victor's catalog of threats. Adrian was not a name in his world. He was a rumor from the wrong side of the city, a shape in the business pages, a name from some story Victor had skimmed and forgotten, feels. But Victor Hale hadn't built a financial empire by being unable to recognize faces, feels. He had shaken hands in some room with a man who knew a man who did business with Adrian Volkov, and at that handshake, in a restaurant booth 3 years ago, he had been quietly told, "That's the guy you don't make an enemy of. Don't do business with him, feels. Don't do business against him. If he ever shows up in your life, you leave." The name came back to him now. She could see it happen. She could see the name Adrian Volkov cross Victor's face like a second piece of bad news landing before the first one has. Feels, his knuckles on the podium went white. Feels. She stopped at the edge of the stage. She said nothing. She just looked up at him, and she waited. The ballroom was silent. 800 people, silent. It was a silence so complete you could hear the ice melting in a glass. Somewhere to her right, feels, a woman set her drink down, slowly, and that tiny click of crystal on wood seemed for just a second to be the loudest sound in the world. Victor had to speak first. Adrian told her he would. He will speak. He will say something he shouldn't, feels, because men in his position always do. And Victor, at a podium with a microphone, had never in his life been in a room and not owned the last word. He said it. Evelyn. It came out like a whisper, but the microphone caught it, feels, and it crossed the room like a bell, feels. Then louder, with that strange false brightness of a man realizing he's on a stage. "Sweetheart, you're late. We were worried." No one laughed. No one even moved. Evelyn looked up at him, her hands now folded before her, and she spoke for the first time, feels. Her voice wasn't loud. She spoke exactly as Adrian had told her to, quietly, because she had learned over 7 years of being invisible that the quietest voice in a silent room is the one everyone leans in to hear. "Victor." "Yes, honey." "Feels. I need you to do something for me." "Anything, sweetheart." She let that word, sweetheart, just hang in the air. She let the room hear it. She let 800 people taste the lie in it. The specific wrongness of a man calling his wife that in this ballroom, feels, at this exact moment, feels. Then she said, still quiet, still clear, into a room where a dropped pin would have sounded like a bomb, "I need you to step away from the microphone." Victor laughed. A terrible sound. It was the laugh of a man who isn't sure if he's heard a joke. "Evelyn." "Feels." "Step away, Victor." "Honey, this is." "Step away from the microphone." He didn't move, but his hands left the podium, and for a moment, the podium looked like something he'd been leaning on far longer than it had been holding him up. Feels. Evelyn took one more step forward. She was at the very front now. Every single face in that ballroom was fixed on her. Feels. She could feel Adrian somewhere over her left shoulder. A presence, a weight she didn't turn to look at. Because this room couldn't be about him yet. She looked up at her husband. "Everyone in this room," she said, her voice still quiet, "feels, is about to learn something. I am going to tell them. I would rather they hear it from me than read it in the papers tomorrow. You're welcome to correct me if I miss any details." Victor's mouth opened, but nothing came out, and Evelyn Hart, feels, who had been treated like furniture for 7 years, took a breath and began to speak in the softest voice in the entire ballroom. "My name," she said, "is Evelyn Marsh, feels. For 7 years I was Evelyn Hart. As of 4:15 this afternoon, I am not." The ballroom didn't make a sound. Victor's face didn't change, but his left hand, which had left the podium, slid very slowly into his pocket. Feels. It was a move she'd seen 1,000 times at dinner tables. The gesture he made when a business deal was slipping away, and he was trying to hide that he knew it. "The divorce," she said, "was filed back in December. It was finalized this week." Feels. "My attorney is Diane Kessler. Some of you know her. Most of you have been warned not to." A tiny ripple at a table to her right. A man in a silver tuxedo had whispered to the woman beside him, and she had put her hand flat on the table, hard, feels, without looking at him. The most elegant way a wife has ever told her husband to be quiet. Feels. "I did not want our divorce to become a public affair. I wanted it to be quiet. For my own reasons." Evelyn paused, looking right at Victor. "You'll notice I am not asking for your permission to explain this, Victor. That's new for me." Feels. "You might find it unsettling." His jaw tightened. "Evelyn, we don't have to do this here. We are doing it here, sweetheart. Do not call me sweetheart again tonight, Victor. Not in this room. Not in any room. That word between us is over." Feels. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. She simply said it the way a person flicks off a light switch, and the word between them went dark. Victor just stood there. He didn't speak. Feels. Second, Evelyn said, earlier today, a woman named Priscilla Okafor at the Financial Regulatory Commission received a package of documents concerning Hale Capital Partners. Feels. These documents detail roughly $41 million in irregularities tied to a shipping operation and a series of shell companies. Miss Okafor has been talking since this morning with a former employee of yours who has decided to cooperate. Feels. I think you know which employee I mean. For the first time, Victor's face did something he didn't control. It went slack, just for a second. A muscle under his eye gave way, his mouth fell open, and then he snapped it shut. Feels. His hand came out of his pocket and went back to the podium. He needed something to hold on to. Feels. You are going to be questioned, Evelyn said, possibly tomorrow. I don't know the exact time, but I do know the questions. They are very specific. Feels. The people in this room who do business with you should know that any active contract with Hale Capital Partners is, as of tomorrow morning, a contract with a man about to spend the next 3 years explaining where $41 million went. Feels. Some people here won't even wait that long. Some of you have already started in the last few minutes composing the calls you'll make tonight. I'm not judging you. I would do the same. A chair scraped faintly in the back. Someone had stood up. Feels. No one turned to look. Evelyn lifted her chin ever so slightly. Feels. Third, she said. Evelyn, stop. Third. The house on Ashbury Lane was bought in 2019 through a trust that listed both our names for tax purposes. Under the terms of our divorce, that trust is now dissolved. The house is mine. Feels. I will be selling it. I don't want it. If anyone here is looking for a 22-room house with excellent light in the east drawing room, my lawyer will accept inquiries on Monday. A small, Feels. Shocked laugh sputtered out from someone in the middle of the room. A man. It was silenced almost instantly, but it had happened, and its happening cracked the room's silence in a way that mattered. The ballroom was no longer a single entity. Feels. It was 800 people who moments ago were Victor's guests, and were now something else entirely. Feels. Fourth, she paused, the city apartment, the cars, the art, and Victor's interest in Hale Capital Partners. Those are all his. I want to be perfectly clear about that, because the reporters here will get it wrong if I am not. I am not taking his business from him. Feels. His business is taking itself from him. It's doing so because of choices he made that I had no part in making for him. She stopped. She looked up at him. He was staring down at her with an expression she had never, in 7 years, seen on his face. Feels. It wasn't rage. It wasn't sorrow. It was the face of a man who has just realized in a single second that the floor he stood on his entire life was never a floor at all. It was a rug. Feels. And someone has just taken hold of a corner. Victor. He didn't answer. He couldn't. I want to say one last thing to you personally. The rest of this room can listen in, but this is for you. Silence. For 7 years you lived in a house with me, Feels, and you never knew me. You didn't know how I took my coffee. You didn't know my maiden name was Marsh. You didn't know I stopped wearing perfume back in January. You didn't know I'd opened the safe in your library 47 times since August. Feels. You didn't know any of it because you decided long ago that I was just another beautiful object you had acquired, and so you stopped looking. That was your mistake. Feels. It wasn't the worst thing you did to me, but it was the foundation for all of it. It's the reason you are standing there right now, because a man who actually looks at his wife sees eventually what she is becoming. A man who doesn't look finds out, one night, Feels, in front of 800 people, that she became someone else a very long time ago. Her voice was steady. I'm not angry with you, Victor. I used to be. For about 45 minutes one Tuesday in October. After that, I was something else, Feels, and I've been something else ever since. And I've used these past months to do the work. I am not angry tonight. I don't feel anything for you at all. Feels. That is the part I want you to carry with you from this room. Not my anger. The nothing. You are nothing to me now. You haven't been something to me for a very long time. I just thought you deserved to hear it said out loud, Feels, in a voice you are unable to interrupt. She held his gaze for one more long moment. Then she said very quietly, Goodbye, Victor. She turned. She walked back down the center of the ballroom, the same way she came, Feels. Past the tables of men and women in their best clothes, past the columnist whose mouth was hanging open, past the waiters frozen in place, past the white linen and the chandeliers, and the memory of 100 different lives. Feels. Adrian Volkov walked just behind her on her left, never touching her, never speaking. Everyone in that ballroom would later swear he hadn't said a word the entire time, and they would be right. At the doors, Evelyn paused. She didn't turn around. Heels. She spoke to the empty space behind her. The catering has been paid for through 11. Please stay. It is a lovely room, and she walked out. The doors closed behind her and Adrian, and for 3 solid seconds, Heels, the ballroom was trapped in that silence, the kind that comes when no one knows what to do next. Then, at a back table, a woman stood, picked up her purse, and left. Heels. Then a man near the front. Then 3 people at once from the middle. Within 4 minutes, the ballroom was emptying in that specific way a party ends after an event no one will have the words for in the morning. Heels. Victor Hale stood at the podium and watched it all. He didn't move for a long time. A waiter later said he stood there for nearly 15 minutes, a hand flat on the wood, watching the tables clear, his own staff avoiding his eyes. Heels. Watching the light come up on a ballroom that, an hour ago, had been his. When he finally left the stage, he walked past the bar. He walked past the coat check. Heels. He walked out the side door onto Madison Avenue around 10 o'clock on a Friday night in April. He stood on the sidewalk in a tuxedo with no coat, his phone in his pocket. He didn't take it out. There was no one left to call. Heels. Evelyn didn't go back to the Whitmore. The car took her and Adrian downtown. It stopped before a brownstone on a street she didn't know. Adrian got out first and opened her door. He didn't offer his hand. She'd asked him not to. Heels. He led her up 3 wide stone steps to a black door, unlocked it with a key on a plain steel ring, and stepped aside. The foyer was warm. Heels. A lamp sat on a narrow table, with a single vase and an empty coat hook. The house smelled faintly of cedar, and more faintly of lemon. It didn't smell like a man who lived alone, or like a woman lived with him. Heels. It smelled like a house that had been aired out that afternoon. She stood in the foyer in the black dress, not knowing where to put her hands. "This is mine," he said. "I have 3 others. I picked this one because it's the quietest." Heels. "I thought you might want quiet tonight." "Yes. There is a room at the top of the stairs. Second door on the left. No one is in this house but us. There is food in the kitchen if you want it. Tea." Heels. "Or a bottle of something older than us both if you'd prefer that." Heels. "Or nothing. You don't have to eat. You don't have to speak to me. I'll be in the back room on this floor as long as you're awake. If you need anything, find me. If you don't, you won't see me until morning." Evelyn was silent for a moment. Then she asked, "Adrian?" Heels. "Yes. Why this? Why not a hotel?" He looked at her. "Because," he said, "when a woman does what you just did, she shouldn't fall asleep in a hotel room with a mint on her pillow. Tonight is not the night for a mint. I found that after a certain kind of evening," Heels, "a person needs to be in a house, not in a room someone cleaned that afternoon." Heels. "This is a house. It has been here 110 years. It has outlasted worse nights than this one. I thought you might find that restful." Evelyn looked at him. "Adrian, yes. I am not going to sleep with you tonight." Heels. Something in his face almost looked offended. Almost. He controlled it before it settled. "Evelyn, I did not ask you to. I know. I brought you to a house with a guest room because I thought you might want a guest room." Heels. "I did not bring you to a house with a bed I expect you to be in. If you had asked me to take you to the Whitmore, I would have." Heels. "If you would like to go to the Whitmore now, I will take you. The car is still outside." She looked at him for a long time. "I'm sorry. Don't be. I'm sorry. Anyway." "Evelyn, it is 1:20 in the morning. Go upstairs. There is a robe on the back of the door." Heels. "Toothpaste in the drawer. There's a kettle in the room because I asked someone to put one there, thinking at some point tonight you might want tea by yourself. That is as far as I planned. I have not planned the rest. Go upstairs." She almost laughed. Heels. It rose in her throat and died there. She went upstairs. The guest room was simple. A bed, a lamp, a window facing a small dark garden, a kettle, tea, and a robe on the door, just as he said. Heels. She stood in the middle of the room in her black dress for a minute, then took it off slowly and hung it in the closet. She put on the robe. She sat on the edge of the bed. She didn't cry. She expected to. The body, she'd learned, often defied the mind's plans. She had planned to cry in the car. She didn't. She had planned to cry on the stairs. She didn't. She sat on the edge of the bed in a robe that smelled of cedar and waited for the crying aim, but it never came. What came instead was hunger. It surprised her. Heels. She hadn't eaten since lunch, and she hadn't been hungry then. But she was hungry now, in the clean way a person is after a long run. A physical hunger, separate from everything else inside her. She went downstairs. Adrian was in the kitchen at the counter. Heels. Not the stove. He was tearing bread from a loaf with his hands, something she never would have imagined. Beside him was a plate with cheese, a few olives, and sliced tomatoes. He looked up when she came in. He wasn't surprised. "I thought you might come down." Heels. "I'm hungry, I know. How did you know? I've been through nights like this." "Not the same." Heels. "Close enough. I have learned what a body wants at 1:30 in the morning on a night it's been carrying something for 8 months. He pushed the plate toward her. She stood at the counter and ate bread with a piece of cheese. She ate a tomato. Heels. Then an olive. He poured her water from a pitcher, and she drank it. He poured another, and she drank that one too. They didn't speak. The kitchen was quiet. An ordinary clock on the wall ticked pleasantly. The refrigerator hummed. A car drove past outside. Heels. Its headlights sweeping the wall for a second before disappearing. "Adrian?" "Yes. I want to ask you something." Heels. "Yes, and I want you to answer it honestly." "All right. Why did you delay Priscilla for that extra day?" "The real reason, not the one from the car." He leaned against the counter and folded his arms. He looked at the floor for a second. Heels. Like a man composing a sentence he had never said before. "Because," he said, "I grew up in a town where a woman named Vera Alexandrovna lived 3 houses from my mother. Vera had a husband who beat her. Everyone knew. No one did anything." Heels. "One winter he beat her so badly the doctor said she would never walk again. She walked again." Heels. "It took 3 years. She walked with a cane for the rest of her life. My mother used to bring her bread. That was all. Bread, twice a week. When I was 9, I asked my mother why she didn't do more. My mother said, 'Adrian, I'm not a strong woman.'" Heels. "Bread is what I can do. Bread twice a week is not nothing. It's something Vera knows she can count on. That is not nothing." He paused. "Vera died when I was 19. Her husband outlived her by 4 years. I was already in this country when he died." Heels. "I didn't go back for the funeral, but I thought about that bread. Twice a week." Heels. "My mother was a woman who could not save anyone. She could bring bread. The bread mattered." He looked up. "Scarlet Vane is not Vera Alexandrovna," he said. "She's a woman who made bad choices with a married man and helped him move money." Heels. "I'm not sentimental about her. I am not pretending she is a saint. But when you told Delia Vane to send her sister to New York, you gave that woman bread. 12 hours of bread. It cost you nothing, and it might have saved her life. At the least," Heels, "it saved her from a bad lawyer at 5 in the morning. I delayed Priscilla because you gave her bread, and I wanted, just once, to be a man who let a piece of bread do its work." He stopped. Evelyn didn't speak. Heels. "Adrian?" "Yes. You are a strange man. I know. You move money that isn't yours. You know people who have disappeared. You have 3 houses. You just told me a story about your mother and bread." "Yes. All those things are true at the same time." "They are." Heels. "I do not understand you. You don't have to. I would like to." He looked at her. "Then we have time," he said. "I am not going anywhere tomorrow or the day after. The business is handled. You are free. I am for the first time in 9 years." Heels. "Not in the middle of a fight I have to finish. If you want to understand me, you can take as long as you want." She almost said something. She did not. Heels. She popped the last olive into her mouth, chewing slowly. "Adrian?" "Yes. Thank you for the bread." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "You're welcome, Ms. Marsh." Shika Wong. 7 months on. Heels. Hale Capital Partners was just a name on defunct letterhead. The inquiry Priscilla Okafor began that April morning had spiraled, as they do, into a second, then a third investigation by different agencies. Victor was indicted in June on 17 counts. Heels. He took a plea deal in August. His lawyer told him plainly, "A trial costs a decade of your life. A plea costs 4 years in your name." He chose the 4 years. Scarlet Vane had cooperated, and she had testified. Heels. In the end, she avoided prison, just as Diane predicted she would. She left the city, went back to her hometown, and took a bookkeeping job for a construction company where no one knew her past. That summer, her sister Delia took her call, Heels, and they spoke for 19 minutes. Delia wrote to Evelyn in October. The letter read, "She doesn't know it was you. She doesn't know it was me. She believes we saved her because we're family. Let her. It makes her a kinder person." Heels. But Evelyn never wrote back. She had told Delia in the Blue Kettle that after that night she would no longer know her. Heels. She was not a woman who broke a promise. She kept that letter. She tucked it in a desk drawer, in a study, inside a brownstone on a quiet city street, the place she eventually came to call home. She didn't move in all at once. For 7 weeks, Heels, she stayed in the guest room. Then in early June, she asked Adrian if there was a second-floor room that wasn't for guests, but wasn't his either. He said there was an unused study. That afternoon, she said she'd like it to be hers, heels. Without looking up from his paper, he replied, "The desk by the window has a good chair. My son chose it, so it's better than it looks." And that was that. Eventually, she married him. It was a small affair, a city clerk on a Thursday, heels. Diane stood as a witness. Marguerite came in from her country retirement, and Marguerite cried, heels. She was the only one in the room who did. Evelyn sat her down on the folding chair right next to Adrian's. Afterwards, they took Marguerite to a lunch spot near Gramercy. She dreamed of visiting for 30 years but never had. Evelyn paid the bill, heels. It wasn't a grand wedding, no magazine-worthy dress, no 800 guests filling a ballroom. Evelyn had done the ballroom in a white dress at 24. She had no need to do it twice. She thought of Victor sometimes in the following years, heels, but not often, less and less as time passed. In his second year, he sent a letter from the federal prison, heels. Diane intercepted it, just as she intercepted all his attempts. She called Evelyn from the office. "He sent a letter. Do you want me to read it to you?" Evelyn considered it for a moment, then said, "No. Burn it." Diane replied, "All right." Then, after a beat, heels. "For the record, Evelyn, if you had asked me to read it, I wouldn't have burned it. I would have read it." Evelyn's voice was quiet. "I know. That's why I'm asking you to burn it, please." And so Diane burned it, heels. That was the last time she thought of Victor for many months. And when she did, it wasn't with hate. It was with the strange, cool pity of someone who's walked a great distance, and from a high hill, heels, can finally see the place they left behind with perfect clarity, heels. He was, she realized, a small man who had been told his entire life that he was large. And the chasm between that story and the truth had fueled everything he did. In the end, all he needed was for everyone around him to confirm the myth, heels. The moment one person stopped, the entire story fractured. That fracture splintered through all his other relationships because they were built on that same fragile story. She didn't feel sorry for him. At most, she felt a distant, heels, faint curiosity about his life now. Did he read? Had he made a friend? Did he ever sit in his room on a Wednesday night and think about how she took her coffee, only to realize he never knew? She suspected he didn't. Heels. She imagined he'd told the story of his downfall 100 times by now, and in every version he was still the tragic hero, and she was still just furniture. She'd made peace with being furniture in his story long ago. Heels. It wasn't her job to be a character in his narrative anymore. Her job was to be the lead in her own. But if anyone had asked her later, this is what Evelyn would have said. Revenge isn't what you think it is. It's not a blazing fire, heels. It isn't a piercing scream. It's not some woman in a red dress holding a knife. Those are just the images we use, because they're so much easier than the truth, heels. The truth is, revenge, when it's done right, is a long, quiet, and patient thing. And by the time you reach the end, you are not the same person who began. The woman leaving the ballroom is not the woman who walked into that study with a phone, heels. The woman who walks out has spent 8 months becoming someone new. And at the end of it all, the husband isn't the point. The journey is the point. She would have said the worst thing Victor ever did to her wasn't the affair, heels. Anyone can have an affair. They're cheap. No, the worst thing was the 7 years before it. The years he was home every night, ate dinner with her, slept beside her, and somehow still built his life in a way that left her completely, utterly unseen. Heels. The affair was only a symptom. Being unseen, that was the sickness. A woman can survive infidelity. But a woman cannot truly survive being in a room with a man for 7 years and remaining invisible. That kind of invisibility is a slow-acting poison, heels. By the time you realize you're being poisoned, you're already half dead. The hard part wasn't destroying him. The hard part was climbing back out of the well yourself. She would have said, if asked, heels, that her proudest moment that year was not the ballroom. The ballroom was easy. It was a 40-minute performance she had practiced for 8 months, heels. No, the thing she was proudest of happened on a Tuesday afternoon the next spring. It was in the greenhouse behind the brownstone. Marguerite was visiting for the weekend, and she'd asked Evelyn how she took her coffee. Evelyn said, heels, with milk and a little sugar. And Marguerite replied, I know, I remember. And in that greenhouse, Evelyn began to cry. Not a hard cry, but a small, quiet one. Marguerite simply let her, placing a hand on her shoulder and saying nothing. Heels. She was the kind of woman who knew, long ago, that some tears should not be interrupted with words. That, Evelyn would have said, was the moment. The moment she knew it had all worked. Not the ballroom. The greenhouse. Heels. A woman, crying because someone remembered her coffee. You can't plan a moment like that. You can only earn it years later after you've dismantled your life and rebuilt it, and you finally know that the new foundation is solid. In the end, Heels, she lived a long and mostly quiet life. She never became famous. The ballroom story was news for about 3 weeks, then faded, replaced by other stories. For the next 10 years, some people in the city still remembered Heels. At dinner parties, they would lean in and whisper, "That's her, the one in the black dress," when she entered a restaurant. Evelyn just ignored them. She was done making entrances. She didn't need to do it anymore. Heels. For 12 years, she ran a small foundation that covered legal fees for women who needed to leave their husbands but couldn't afford it. Diane served on the board. They never advertised. It ran on a whisper network, woman to woman, through hairdressers, Heels, pediatricians, and the quiet nurses in emergency rooms. Over 12 years, it funded the freedom of 411 women. 2 of them wrote books. 1 became a state senator. Most just went on to live quieter lives in smaller homes, Heels, with much better coffee. And Evelyn's face was never in a single photograph, because she told Diane from the very beginning, "My name doesn't go on anything." Heels. Not the letterhead, the website, or the thank you notes. Put Diane's name on it. Use anyone's name. Not mine. I had my night in the ballroom. That was enough. Adrian grew old beside her. Slowly, on a day she could never pinpoint, he transformed. Heels. He became less the man in the tuxedo standing at a ballroom door, and more a man with capable hands who baked good bread simply because he decided to learn in his 60s and discovered he had a talent for it. At 62, Heels. He retired from most of what he once was. 3 houses became one. The man at the window became no one. He died at 77 in that same brownstone on a winter afternoon with his head in her lap and a book lying open beside him on the couch. Heels. She stayed with him, until the light left the room and for a little while after. And no, she never remarried. She'd known the 2 great chapters of her life. In one, she was a man's furniture. In the other, a man's partner, Heels. And somewhere in her 60s, she decided she had no need for a third. Besides, who else would ever know just how she took her coffee? She lived 11 years without him, mostly in the brownstone. She read. She walked in the park each morning, Heels, until her knees whispered it was time to stop, and so she walked shorter. Wednesdays were for lunch with Diane, who also never remarried, and who, in her 80s, was the sharpest woman Evelyn had ever known. Which was really saying something, Heels. Once a year, she spoke at a small foundation dinner, introduced under a false name, a private joke that Diane loved, and so Evelyn let her have it. She died on a Tuesday in October in her own bed, and in her last clear hour she thought of that as a small, Heels, private piece of poetry, because it was on a Tuesday in October, a lifetime ago, that a phone had buzzed 3 times on a marble table, and she had crossed a rug in stocking feet to answer it. That was the last thing Evelyn Marsh thought of before she left. Heels. Not the ballroom, not the applause, not 800 faces. Just the rug, the stocking feet, the cool weight of the phone in her hand. That one small moment when a woman who had been furniture lifted a piece of glass to her ear and decided, Heels, without ever knowing it, that she was going to become something else, and she had. Heels, and that she had.